Welcome to the first and possibly last installment of the OK Podcast. I'm here with my good friend Matt.
Hello, my name's Matt.
And we are here. It's this is the final day of PAX East, which you were at.
Yes, I went to PAX East on Friday.
Yeah, I didn't go at all because I'm lazy. And this is, I think, only a day away from the release of Mass Effect Andromeda.
Yes, very, very close to everyone's most anticipated game of 2017, Mass Effect Andromeda. I mean, after all the other games that have come out that are way better and way more.
Well, we don't. It's not out yet. We can't judge it yet. We can judge the trailers and all the weird inconsistencies. But
I haven't seen any of the trailers and know about any. I've seen. You know how sometimes they make you watch the 30-second video? Yeah, I've seen parts of that, but then I usually hit the skip because I'm not interested.
That's nice. Yeah, I mean, well, we're not really here to talk about Mass Effect anyway.
I broke my own thing. I wasn't going to talk about Mass Effect the whole time.
Nice. But we're actually here to talk about BioWare's other series, Dragon Age. Neverwinter Nights, not Baldur's Gate. The Dragon Age series, and we're going to talk about all three games and we'll try to keep it in order, but there is going to be a lot of bleeding. Mostly it's going to be in referencing back. Yeah, I think there will be a lot of callbacks when we talk about the first game, and we'll move forward. I don't want to spoil our podcast, but that is probably how this is going to play out. So we should just start right away. I guess we'll start with how did we get into BioWare? How did we get into Dragon Age?
Well, I'm probably going to be the junior partner on this one. I played KOTOR a little bit on my friend's Xbox, but I didn't get to play it fully until it had probably a release on Steam. I played that though, then I got really into the Mass Effect series, and when I first played Dragon Age for the first time, I hated it. And stopped playing it before completing the Human Noble storyline. I was just like, it looks too awful, it's too just like, what's going on? And it was just not my cup of tea, but I ended up picking up again, and I really enjoyed it the next time I played it.
Yeah, similar for me in regards to how I got into the game. I've been playing BioWare games for a long time. I think the first one I played was Neverwinter Nights, which is sort of like the sequel to Baldur's Gate. I know the true fans, the purists, they go back to Baldur's Gate, and I understand how important those RPGs are.
I don't.
Well, in terms of that style of RPG and all the freedom it provides and the true emulation of D&D and all that. Neverwinter Nights is very similar, but it's not as well regarded. But that was a big game for me because it came with a tool set. You can make your own games. And it was really cool because that was kind of one of my first looks at what it might look like to be making a game. So that was a really important game for me to play. But, you know, I played Knights of the Old Republic and Jade Empire and all that stuff. And then we get to Mass Effect, which I got into once that came out. But yeah, with Dragon Age, I definitely, when I first saw it, I was like, fantasy, I don't want to do that again. You know, I thought it was going to be generic because, I don't know, I just wasn't super into it.
And in a lot of ways it kind of is, but it's sort of like, I don't know how to quite describe it. Like it almost embraces its genericness.
Yeah, I mean they knew what elements were stock and what they wanted to flip and kind of do in a way you might not have seen before. And yeah, I didn't get the game until they released the Ultimate Edition, which was like, there was a lot of DLC for the game. And I think just seeing like, wow, look at all the value I'm getting. I might as well pick this up now. And it was a great purchase. It was a game that provided ungodly hours.
I've actually bought in Dragon Age twice. I bought it on the Xbox 360 and played it on the Xbox 360 despite borrowing Mike's version for forever and beating it on that, and then I returned it. But then I got the Ultimate Edition again on the computer. Yeah. And playing it on the computer was very nice. It just made everything a little bit more slick, but again, not really one of those graphic intensive like, oh, look at this game. But that certainly doesn't hurt it, in my opinion.
Yeah, it definitely, I think it came out in 2010, right? It wasn't like the most... Are you going to look it up?
I am going to look it up because I don't remember, because I'm not
I think it was 2010, but I I played it when the Ultimate Edition came out, which I think was like a year or more later. It doesn't have the best visuals, and the way that the art looks in game is very muddy. It kind of falls into that trope that people had of like
2009.
Oh, okay. Wow, I'm wrong. Either way, maybe I played it in 2010. It has that look of like things are muddy. There's bloom for no reason. Like it didn't look that great, and the character models, they kind of just look like mannequins.
It can get very like. That was one of the original things that was very off-putting about the game. Is It was very like you said, they were like marionettes.
Yeah, especially I mean those sex scenes.
What age rating is this podcast in?
I mean, we'll keep it.
This is for a general audience.
This is like a PG-13.
Yes,
I suppose. I swore a lot in my E3 video. I'm not like super happy with that, but whatever. I was just going off the cuff.
Well, I mean, E3 certainly gives you reasons to swear.
I just remember,
and not in any of the good ways.
I just remember being really like off topic, but just like shitting on David Cage, who we always do that. So whatever.
It's like a natural pastime for us.
Yes. It is. We love David Cage. But getting back to David Cage's game Dragon Age Origins.
Yes. Oh, that's probably his best game.
Yeah.
Actually, yes, definitely. Oh, wait, no. Never mind. He didn't work on it.
As far as being an interactive adventure, I mean, it really... Just the amount of things you can do.
It's got everything you could possibly want. You can be... It's a game where you can be anyone.
Yeah.
You can be the horrible human being and cut that poor guy who survived the Darkspawn attacks for literally no reason.
Yeah, that there were always those options I would see when you scroll through your text options of what you can do, and I'd go, "What? Why would anyone do this? Has anybody done this?" And then I would do them like just to see what would happen.
But you never feel really like tied to any particular sort of like morality.
The only morality that I think you're tied to is either the one you decide to have going into it, or the way that your companions look at you, which I like that system a lot, of how everyone can get pissed and leave, you know?
But it was never... I mean, I enjoyed that, but I never had a problem with unless you're making terrible decisions on purpose.
It's pretty easy to placate people. I do appreciate how they have one or two decisions that really does force them to have a problem with you, though, which was nice. Depending on, like, Alistair, there are a few things that will really piss him off.
You can just completely...
Yeah.
He's so sanctimonious.
I do want to say, if you haven't played the Dragon Age games, you should definitely play the first one, obviously, to understand it. We are going to cover plot details in, like, no particular order here, so I assume you know a bit about the series.
I'm sure you do, Empty Void.
Yes.
You know a lot about the Dragon Age series.
Yeah.
I just don't think that it has held up over the years. It's one of those games that feels less classic and more outdated.
The original?
Yes. Because it's one of those games that is begging for an HD remake. And I talk about this with BioWare games all the time, is they're remaking all these games that are...
the EA hasn't done any of this. They haven't done any HD. They've kind of spoken against that. That's true.
Everyone hates them, though.
I mean, it's one of those things where people would yell at EA if they did this because it's an easy cash grab. But I personally... I would like for some of those to happen because I'd like to be able to play them again because my 360 died, so I can't play any of those games.
Rip 360.
I know, it finally kicked the bucket. But, yeah, this game, really a throwback. I mean, that was their goal, was to make Dragon Age 1 a throwback to their older works.
Yes, and it feels... And despite it's old now, and it's weird to think about it that it's old now. It is old, yeah. And it's referencing even older games that nobody has ever played. Yeah, well, I mean, people have played them, but
even if you got into BioWare through Knights of the Old Republic, it has a lot of element. I mean, people like Knights of the Old Republic. Spoiler alert, Knights of the Old Republic is like mostly a reskin of Neverwinter Nights. Yes. So for me, I never really got the big... Star Wars, that's cool.
But no one played when Neverwinter Nights.
I know,
it's
but
one of those...
But yeah, like the game is basically the same, it's just reskinned. And so you get here, this is a new game, obviously. Dragon Age Origins is built from the ground up, new engine and all that. But it has that. If you liked KOTOR, if you liked how you explored the world and talked to people, then you would get into this. And you might even be nostalgic, because 2009, it's a few years after KOTOR.
We keep getting sidetracked because it's just...
I know.
It's...
This is all going to get edited out, or it'll stay in. Who knows?
It's just that, you could just go on. I love Dragon Age so much.
This could just be a BioWare podcast, but then it would be way too long.
Yeah, I can only speak to a very small section, but it's definitely... Dragon Age is one of those games that almost hits that nail on the head perfectly when it comes to depth and accessibility. Yeah. Where some of those older games they're not as sort of like UI centric, but they scare a lot of people. Like, that's the reason why I never played any of them. It's just like,
the first two Fallout games have that problem where it can be a bit of a tough to...
I tried playing Fallout 1.
Yeah.
I got like 6 steps out of the bunker and died.
Yeah, and Baldur's Gate is very, very similar. So I think that people have that issue. And Dragon Age 1 doesn't have that at all. It's modern enough in terms of the presentation.
Yes.
But it has a lot of old school design elements, and that mostly comes down to the role-playing. And that's the big thing for me. Like, BioWare makes role-playing games. A lot of companies make role-playing games. But people have such different definitions of what a role-playing game is. And, a lot of people just look at, like, you're leveling up your class and all that. And they think that that's what makes it. But no, the role-playing, you have to have the character progression, you influence what the character does.
Yes, and Dragon Age does that very well. You actually feel like you're affecting the characters you're with, but you also feel like they are affecting you. Like, even some of the poor decisions, like Morgan hates anything you do that's good, but she usually has a comment on why this isn't the best decision. And Dragon Age versus Mass Effect has actual good guy, bad guy decision. Yeah. Like, there's a thing that you can do which is technically the good thing to do, and then there's a thing you can do that's the bad guy thing to do. Yeah. And unlike Mass Effect, good choices are sometimes punished.
Yeah,
which
that's true.
Doesn't happen in Mass Effect. Happens once.
Yeah, definitely a shortcoming in Mass Effect was the Paragon almost always had a reward that Renegade didn't always have. Yeah, I mean, there's less of a morality. The only morality system is just the individual approval of your party members, which is very specific and not always a big deal. But
you can like piss Shale off by, I'm gonna start enslaving people into golems again because that worked so well the last time.
Yeah, and then there are a handful of key decisions that they can turn on you, or they can really lose sight. And that's what I like, is that as a video game that's very open-ended, the level of like character development that can happen is pretty grand. Even
just like small little characters.
Yeah.
Like I can't remember specifically, but there's the one dwarven girl who wants to go to the Tower of Mages, and you actually she was informed by the environment. You could see how terrible everything was for everyone in Orzammar.
Yeah,
you could see how actually like happy she was doing, and you can go and be the good person and be like, you know a lot about Lyria.
Or just shut her down.
Or just say, no, you'll never be a mage. Get out of my face.
Yeah, and those things inform you. And that's one of the fun things about replaying the game, was that you can give yourself a character arc.
Oh, exactly.
It's like a masterclass in role-playing flexibility. You can go from having one... I mean, this is like the story. I mean, the game begins with these 6 origins.
That's what I think, when you talk about it, you lose sight of the individual things that make Dragon Age so good.
Yeah.
Because it's really one of those components building on the core. And I wasn't even thinking about the origins and how just awesome...
And that starts your character a certain way. Like, you have a mindset because this is your past, this is your upbringing.
Yes.
And then that will change once you get forced out of it. In that opening. And that, I have to say, like, it's crazy how some of those openings are clearly a little better than others. Like, some of them are really short, some of them are really long. They all have a good amount of detail, and they're all pretty, I like them. But it is amazing that they were like, we're going to start our game with, like, the introductory sequence being one of 6.
But it's even more flexible within them, because you still have a lot of... You can be... like the Elven City one is probably my favorite one, just because it's sort of like throws everything up in the air, and you have a lot of options, and you have a lot of like stuff to deal with because it doesn't deal with, no
fun topics in that one.
No, nothing is fun, and I don't even really want to talk about it because it's so depressing. Yeah. And I don't want to use the R word.
I think that's one of
that R word is racism.
I think that your enjoyment of Dragon Age might also be dependent on which origin you picked. I'm sure most people pick the human noble.
Yeah, that's a mistake.
Which is kind of the least interesting one. It's okay, but it's very...
It's much better for a second playthrough when you sort of when you understand how terrible Earl Howe is.
Yeah, I like it in retrospect, but when
because he just sort of up and betrays you, and you're just like, what?
Who's this guy? Yeah. I think that the city elf one especially, that will definitely set the tone. You're going to understand, like, these aren't regular elves, and these dwarves aren't as jolly as I remember. So I think those do a great job of throwing you into the society.
And it makes it mature and gritty without really feeling like it's like trying to be mature.
Yeah, I don't know about gritty, but the maturity. I mean, it has an like Game of Thrones.
I mean, like gritty, like literally, like the whole grit, like literally, like dirt.
Literal dirt.
Yes,
well, that's dirt. True. Yeah, it has a almost Game of Thrones attitude at times. You can tell that they were inspired by those books. I mean, the show didn't really exist at the time, so I think that was definitely a big influence. Like, you're mixing your fantasy tropes of Lord of the Rings, and you're taking the realistic aspects of something like Game of Thrones, and you're making a very nice mixed drink out of both of them.
That slowly turned into mixed.
Well, it's a good drink, but then you drink it a little more, and then you're like, what happened?
And you get that the worst hangover in the world.
You wake up in bed and there's a copy of Inquisition next to you, and you're like, what? So we're getting ahead of ourselves.
This will not be all happy fun time.
I want to just talk about Origins forever. I mean, there's still plenty to talk about, obviously. I mean, I guess, let's talk about, like, the characters. I mean, compared to other BioWare games, I think some of their... like, Alistair and Morgan and some of those other characters really well put together.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. The Alistair and Morgan are perfect foils for each other, where... Alistair is the goody two-shoes, responsible one who always wants to take the lazy...
But he's like, that's what I like, is he doesn't have enough confidence to be in charge, so
he obviously should be. Yeah, he's just like nope.
He's like, I don't want to do that. Like, I guess you got to do it now. I always like that aspect about him, where he's not quite there, and but that's where his character goes. So,
and he can become more or less. Yeah. Like, he can slowly lose the last bit of...
Which is really unfair.
You can be so mean.
You really can.
To Alistair, and it's great.
Ugh, I always feel bad for him.
Just like I always said, it would be like at the last second choosing Saddam Hussein over.
Yeah. Just like, we're going to switch sides, bitch. Get out of here. Adios. Yeah, that's... Oh, man. Yeah, I couldn't believe you could do that. Like, I just had to see how it played out.
Dog trainer, Rorihan.
Loghain, the MacTier. Loghain is the bad guy.
Yes.
And there's a dog trainer in the Ostrogar in the first section of the game who kind of looks like him, so we always just say
no, not you messed that up. Not. Yes, Loghain?
Loghain.
No, you're thinking of...
No. Loghain.
Loghain does not look like...
He looks like the dog trainer.
No. You're mixing up characters. You're thinking of the Grey Warden that you find randomly in the dungeon.
Well, they all look the same. All three of them.
What about the armies of mini Sir Jories?
Sir Jory, yeah.
Sir drinks out.
We're talking about all these really minor who gives a fuck characters, but that's just how much we love this game.
And I feel like it just gets sort of like scattered. Like, unless you know the game, you'll have no idea what we're talking about.
I know.
We're all over the place.
But that's how much we love this, is even these minor characters who you talk to...
Sir Jory is so...
You talk to these guys once, but there's still, like, a character, and, like, the way you can talk to them is different. Davith was the other guy. Davith died. They all died. We're talking about the beginning of the game. Remember the two Grey Wardens in training who fucking die? Yeah. They could have been characters. Nah.
No, they decided to have...
you.
Yeah.
You make it. Yeah, I mean, I like that. I like the red herring aspect of that opening. You're going to join the Grey Wardens, and then it's like,
Yeah.
Duncan's just, no, they're dead. I really didn't see that coming. Like,
No.
I know now there are some hints, of course. I mean, as you explore, and you can kind of piece it together that this might not go so well. But yeah, I really didn't expect that at all.
Everyone dies, and you're just left.
They introduce these characters that you think are going to be your mentors or the important players.
Remember when they tried to do that for Awakening? Where they had the big marketing blitz for the new companion
in Awakening?
In Awakening.
Oh, the guy who's not in the game technically, or
the girl with the fancy helmet, and they did the whole marketing thing that she was going to be a character, and she just dies because she fails. Because they're just like, oh yeah, remember that whole thing about people dying from drinking Darkspawn blood?
They got to remind you. There's a good chance you'll just die if you try to become a Grey Warden. Yeah. Being a Grey Warden is a horrible. Like you almost feel like, oh, I'm going to be a superhero, a chosen champion, and they really do drill that it's like a shitty existence. These guys just sit in their castle for hundreds of years waiting for bad guys to show up.
But I just don't understand how everyone thinks they're. Or is it just Logan that thinks they're the bad guys? Or are they like hated in general?
Well, people don't like them because they just sit around and like this is the most important thing. This thing that's gonna happen, I don't know when. Like, if you have these doomsday weirdos chilling, you might not like them. Getting back to the characters. I mean, Morrigan is like the whole other counterbalance to Alistair.
Yes.
Like she I like characters especially in RPGs. I like when you have a character who is most definitely not good, but isn't bad enough to like be against you.
But it really sort of informs the stakes. That the stakes are so high that the literal demon.
Well, you don't know
witch.
That. I mean, she's the daughter of this horrible.
It's not. Yeah. It's not that hard to connect.
I know, but like this idea of these. These are like the boogeymen. You could argue misunderstood, but whatever. They're still not great people.
Those marshmen stole from me.
Yeah, like they're not great people. And that guy, this is some great line delivery. He
Thank you, random
NPC.
What village was that?
That was in Lothering.
Lothering,
the first real the tutorial is so. I mean, I can't call it a tutorial, but like the beginning is so long. You have the origin, then you have Ostragar, then you go to Lothering, but that's where it opens up.
Yes,
I do. People say they like getting into games very quickly, but I mean, I like it when a game takes its time and it doesn't feel like.
Well, this is certainly a game that benefits from being eased into a little.
Oh
bit.
yeah.
Where if they just threw you in the middle of this and had people talking about wizards and blood magic and Templars,
you'd be very overwhelmed.
And the Darkspawn and the Kunari. Oh yeah, remember the
Kunari? Well, that's one of the weirder things, in my opinion, about the first game was that they created this new race, but you only ever see like one or two, one of them, because the only other ones in the game are just generic, like 4 generic enemies that you don't actually talk to. So it's really weird how he is just there.
Sten, we're talking about Sten.
Sten, you can meet him in Lothering and get him as a party member, but
or not,
or just leave him. But that's,
you can threaten the freaking poor
the church
lady.
Just give us the key, please.
Give us the key, or I'll kill you.
Yeah, like he is an interesting choice just because the Kunari are a really weird society, and he's almost like an alien. Like talking to him is very frustrating.
Yes. And now only if they did something interesting with that instead of just.
Well, they didn't do anything with it in that game. Like in Origins,
but in Origins it made sense though because it was sort of like the Kunari were this distant. They were literal aliens, like they were this distant, understandable.
Yeah, weirdos.
Yeah,
they're a very odd society by comparison. I mean, I kind of consider that like a weakness. Like they could have done something more with his plot. Like his quest that he has is just about finding his sword, and I understand. Like his sword is really important to him. All his friends died, but also like we never meet anybody.
Yeah,
we never meet any other Kunari.
You meet the dwarf guy who stole his sword from him.
He bought it. He bought it from a guy who found it. It's not really stealing.
You still got to kill him anyway. Although you can talk him out of it. You can talk him into just giving it to you.
Oh yeah, of course you can. I mean, that's what makes it a good game. Like, you don't just go up to the guy and say, give me the sword. Sarcastic, give me the sword. or I don't want the sword, but it triggers a fight anyway. This isn't that kind of game.
Where you can literally go up to a guy and just say, I'm going to kill you and take your stuff. Or you can actually do what the game is supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, they trust you. Like, you want to see the content you want to see, and, like, you know, a developer could write a whole quest and you could, like, screw it up.
Yes.
It's kind of, I mean, that takes guts. And...
You can even try and defile the ashes of Andraste.
Yeah.
And one of your other... I'm sort of ambivalent on Liliana as a character.
Yeah.
I always have been.
Yeah,
It's never quite worked for me, other than the fact that she's like an adorable redhead. But with really terrible mid 2000s graphics.
Yeah, I get what they're trying to do with the character. I don't know, it didn't really grow on me.
But you can, and she gets really pissed and tries to stop you.
Yeah,
and then you can
win.
Yeah,
both of them. 2 of the party members you can have. You know, if you try to defile the urn, which is a thing you need, you know.
Become a berserker. And being a berserker was awesome.
Yeah, you just want to be a crazy guy. I mean, I like that they'll just try. I mean, granted, Liliana getting killed it will cause some problems that we'll talk about once we get to the future. But I like that
I've seen the future, and it doesn't work.
I guess one criticism I do have of the opening is that they kind of throw a little too many characters at you. Like, you got Morgan, you got Alistair, you got your warrior and your wizard, and you get Liliana and Sten very close together. And you
cannot forget about the best character in Dragon Age Origins.
Zevran? Remember him? Did you forget about him?
No. Okay. I wanted to talk about Zevran, because he was, like, actually, like...
Zevran is like the reason this game is rated M.
Yes. Yes, very much.
Other than the copious blood, which I turned off immediately because it looked really bad.
I kept it on the whole time because I thought it was hilariously over the top.
Every Dragon Age game, I turn the gore off immediately.
That's interesting. I'd never have done that.
Because it stays on your characters for too long. It's in the cutscenes, and it's like, dude, I'm trying to talk, man.
It never really bothered me. I thought it was stupid.
If it stayed on their armor or weapons, I'd be fine. But it gets all over their face, and it's just like...
It's called the face cloth.
It's very cheesy. I don't know. I don't like that. But Zevran, yeah, he's like... He's a nicer guy than Morgan. Like, as far as being like a bad guy... I mean, he's an assassin, so...
Yes. You know, well, I mean, but you sort of, like, get to understand why he does that.
It's just his job.
Yeah.
Like, he's just paid to do that. He's like, he really doesn't think too much of it. I mean, yeah, you got all...
And then he can betray you.
Yes, but you'd have to be like... Yeah, if you're an asshole to him, he will betray you. Which, I mean, I don't know how many people would be an asshole to him. He's not very mean.
Well, I just plain hate homosexuals, so
well, he's not...
treated
well, see, we have to cut that, because...
Yes, please do. No, I don't remember a lot about his character, just because he was...
He's kind of one... Like, he's thinner than other characters, I find.
Him and Oghren, I just...
Yeah.
It wasn't because they weren't interesting, but again, it's about... You get used to your party and how your party works, and when you start switching things out,
that's true.
You can get punished really severely for not bringing the right mix of people.
I think that's why a lot of people don't really have Oghren or don't think about him. Well, first of all, Oghren isn't the most interesting character because he's Gimli. Like he's drunken Gimli. Like he is a very common.
He's more drunk Gimli.
He's a more drunk version of Gimli.
I've seen what John Royce Davies looks like in Chupacabra Dark Seas.
What a great movie.
I know how it... Can we actually just talk about Chupacabra Dark Seas instead of this DragonAge shit?
If you haven't seen Chupacabra Dark Seas, then go see it, because it's really bad. It's probably on, like, Netflix or something.
You could probably find it on YouTube.
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, Oghren, he's just kind of there. You get him very late. That's the whole thing with Orzammar, is that Orzammar is one of like the 3 or 4 paths you can take at the beginning, but it's so long and dense and difficult that it feels like it's like the second half of the game when it's really not. You can do it first if you want. I've done that. It's kind of fun.
And it's horrifying. Because it's hard.
But I like it because it's like, who would want to go there first?
Yes.
Yeah. Who would want to go into this deep hole full of darkspawn.
And the deep roads just keep going on.
I do think that that the problem is it is very long. Like, there's no quick way to get out of the city. You have to do a decent amount of quests just to do that.
Just to get...
Yeah. So, I think that Orzammar has some pacing issues, but, like, this is a really long game overall, so it is hard to complain, because I can't say I was bored, but...
I can tell you about the one thing that I was bored at. The one awful stain on Dragon Age Origins.
What's that?
And that is the Fade.
Yeah, I only remembered that a few days ago. The Mage Tower is not a very long part of the game, except for... one thing. For those who don't remember, you're going up the floors.
I wish I was you, if you're one of those people who don't remember.
If you don't remember,
shut off the podcast right now, because skip to this time frame to not read about, to listen to whatever. Just
look. Okay.
The Fade sucks.
Yeah, well, the Fade is the dream realm where the demons live, more or less. And basically, you go through the tower, you're fighting demons, and you go into a room on like the third floor or so. It's not even the second to last floor. Like, it's in the middle. And there's the sloth demon, and he's just like, go to sleep. And so you go to sleep, and there's nothing you can do. There's no way to circumvent this. And you wake up in the Fade dungeon, which is this massive, like, it's
labyrinthian.
It's a huge maze with all, like, I think that the Fade is interesting just because the developers want to try something different and break the pace, but it comes at a really bad time, and it takes so long to do.
And it's very confusing. It's something that if I ever want to play the game again, I think I would just go off a guide.
I think it could have been shortened and not lost its effect. Like, I like... The only thing that's interesting about the Fade, honestly, are just the parts where you go into the dreams of the companions and you see their dreams. And I like that part, because that's some fun interaction.
Yes.
But I don't like having to turn into a mouse so I can turn into a fire thing, so I can turn into a golem to open the door. Like, I just... Oh my god. It really took forever. It felt like it took forever. I don't...
And it's why I do the Mage's Tower last every time I play the game now.
I do usually do it first to get it out of the way. What sucks about the Fade also is that because it's such a weird part, they put in all these magic things that can increase your stats.
Yes.
So, like, if you want to min-max, you have to spend a lot of time in there finding all those collectibles.
It's like they're like the stuffed guys on the sticks, right?
Like the objects that just give you points of strength or magic.
Oh, plus one vitality, great.
So yeah, that's the most questionable part of the game, where, I mean, everything else is great, but I just think that like, even in the deep roads, when you're going and you're just fighting for most of it, it's still, I still enjoy that part.
Yes.
Like, I enjoy a lot of the dungeons, usually the last area of everything is like this cool combat challenge with some secrets and puzzles, and that's, like, awesome. Who doesn't love that?
It didn't go overboard with puzzles.
Yeah,
I had some puzzles.
There's like one or two that might have been a little but
mostly resulting from the Fade, which is like, let's just put all the puzzles there. Everyone will love it.
Yeah, but besides that, it's pretty. Definitely enjoyable. I like the elven catacombs that you go into in the forest.
When you're chasing down, when you're fighting all the werewolves.
Yeah, like. Yeah, I just like this game.
There's so much. There's
so much to talk about. It's crazy. Yeah. You wrote down notes. I want to mention that. You wrote down...
I did not write down any of them, and there's nothing positive written in my notes. Unfortunately,
what's that big 2 on the notepad represent?
Complaints about Dragon Age?
Yeah.
2.
Well, we'll get there. I don't know if we're going to start talking about that yet.
No, I still my blood
2's
pressure.
Okay, but yeah. I mean, we'll get to it. He's looking at me funny, but there are some things I really don't like about it. But
2 is okay.
Yeah.
Dragon Age 2 looks a lot better when you compare it to Dragon Age 3.
All right.
But again, I can feel my blood pressure rising right now, even just thinking about it.
Well, let's talk about happy thoughts. What do you like about?
I liked how some of the romances felt very natural. Like it was.
Oh yeah, because you can just do them whenever. You can just talk. It was like normal interaction.
And they were very long and in depth.
Yeah.
And you could space it out, or you could do it all at once, and it really sort of.
Yeah.
And then you could start playing with stories and different stuff that you could do at different times.
Yeah.
I really liked. It had the best class ever. The two swords.
Two-handed swords was OP.
Yes, you could just. You were like a buzzsaw.
You really were. Two-handed sweep.
Yes, two-handed sweep and
really OP.
And you could press Y and you would spin your weapons. And you could mash something else, and you were like, I liked the bad guys. They did generic.
Well, the human. You like the Darkspawn? Or?
Yes.
I mean, they're all right as far as being like a kind of like an Urukai-esque, threat. They don't have to be deep. They don't have to have motivation. But I like the blight. Like I like the concept of the disease.
Yes, that it's this reoccurring.
Yeah. And everything that they are comes from what they've done. Like, this disease is turning people into this, It's these horrifying brood mothers that...
Oh,
oh, God, yeah.
So many fat titties.
Yeah, I mean, not the most interesting design, but still a creature that was, like, gross and horrifying to this day. Like, endless breasts. Horrible creature.
And you would think that sounds like a good thing. Like,
well, no, it's not even that. It's not even that. Like, they didn't even. There's no like alluring.
They really got the most out of their M rating.
I mean, as far as The Witcher 2 wasn't out yet, but I would say that this was kind of close to that in terms of. I mean, you don't have like graphic sex or anything.
No,
but you've got
really awkward marionette sex.
Yeah, watching it's like Team America. It's like the sex scene in that. That's what
it is. It's exactly like this.
It's pretty good.
Although I think the sex scene in Team America actually might be more realistic.
Yeah, I mean, they tried. Well, one thing that I also like about the way the romances are done is how, based on your origin, it can. I think this mostly applies to Alistair, because Alistair, he can become the king.
You can insert yourself into the politics of the world.
I mean, you can, and
in a very big way.
Yeah, if you're a human noble, and you marry him, you essentially become the queen. Like, there are all these outcomes that can happen based on origins or based on romance. And I mean, one of the things that I think is really interesting is you combine that, like, does your character get higher status? Does Alistair get higher status? Is it through romance? Let's combine this with the Morrigan decision at the end.
Yes.
And that creates one of the most interesting things for me is, like, I like that decision because all the variables can change. The context can change. If Alistair is king and he has to create this child with Morrigan, but, this is like a threat to the throne now as well. Like, it really... And that element could just not be there.
And it brings up a lot of sort of, like, moral questions.
And it could be your kid.
Yeah.
So...
Crystal Dragon Jesus, baby. Who doesn't love Crystal Dragon
Jesus? I don't know why we call it that, but we just call it that for some reason. I mean, we'll get back to that.
We're being really relevant, by the way. This is really really hot takes on a relevant game series.
Look, man. If people can still make videos about, like, Dark Souls 1, like, I don't know if I ever showed you the video, Matthew Matosis, one of my favorite YouTubers, his almost 7-hour video talking about Dark Souls. If you could make that these days and get a shitload of views...
Oh, but Dark Souls is the very in thing right now. Like, you got...
Well...
Dark Souls became sort of what I always imagined that Dragon Age could be, and it's kind of depressed.
Really?
Well, because I
didn't think we'd be making Dark Souls comparisons in this video.
Just sort of as franchises go.
Oh.
Like, Dark Souls was one of the sort of in the wilderness games that blew up and became big.
Yeah.
And they made a ton of different games off of it, and it's like... Dark Souls.
Oh, yeah. Well,
and Dragon Age came out, and it was very...
It was definitely appreciated.
Yes.
But, well, it's funny that I get what you're saying, and my counter is that it indirectly did kind of blow up in the sense that, games like Pillars of Eternity, I think there's a new, like, Planescape Torment... the Wasteland, like...
You're talking about... I have no idea what any of these games
all
are.
Of these games that come from...
I'm very ignorant when it comes to games.
All of these games that come from the era that Baldur's Gate was around, they did get big, and they do have successors or sequels now. And so, yeah, that is a newer trend, but Dragon Age Origins, in a way, I think, kind of... It started it. It didn't necessarily cause it, but...
I definitely think it was in part of that upswing in that style of game.
Yeah, and it was good because, I mean, you have, at the same time that BioWare was making this, they're making Mass Effect, which is a bold attempt to modernize their formula.
Well, but Mass Effect's better in almost every conceivable way.
I mean, I look at it as apples and oranges. Like, I like Mass Effect. I don't like, I mean, the first Mass Effect.
Apples, well, I mean, you could... Mass Effect 1 and Dragon Age 1, sure, are different games, and then it was... I would say it would be a race to the middle, but it was more like Dragon Age took a swerve to the right off the road.
It's for me, it's a very different story. Each series is its own. But you can tell where Mass Effect kind of seeped into things once we get into 2. We've talked a lot about the story, but we should probably talk about the actual act of playing it. Like, it is funny. I mean, RPGs, the story is such a big part of the game. It's a pretty simple system as far as you have the abilities, they have cooldowns.
Yes.
Like, we all know how to play a Western RPG that does those things, you know? Like,
it's very much like KOTOR.
Oh, yeah.
Or in all those other games, but it's very... I think the changes that they made were changes for the better.
Yeah.
In the gameplay, because when you start getting into that Dragon Age 2, everything is faster and more responsive.
Yeah, I think...
Where... In Dragon Age Origins, you could press the A button as fast as you want, but I don't think that actually helped you attack.
It is definitely...
faster.
Yeah, no, you can't... You don't attack any faster. It is, you just hit A and then they start attacking at their own pace. I definitely do feel like sometimes the combat takes a little too long. Like, especially as it gets harder. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a super hard game. There are parts of it that can be difficult, but like... my play style where I don't min-max, I don't try to get a gotcha character, but I level everything up the way that I think it should be done. And
Walking bomb.
Yeah, I mean...
Walking bomb forever.
There are some abilities, especially if you're playing as a mage, that are much better than others. Archers could become, broken. I didn't really try to make a broken archer build, but I hear that you could make archers disgustingly
especially in Awakening.
Yeah.
When they added tons of stuff. I always thought... Yeah. But that was a nice thing that, like... I felt that you could actually play as different roles and actually feel...
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's fun to play as the warrior because you want to whack people with your sword. It's fun to play as a mage because walking bomb is broken.
Yeah.
But you could play archer. You could play the support role.
Oh, yeah.
And feel like you actually were having a significant...
That would be a fun way to do it, actually, is to try to be a purely support character and hope that the AI is good enough to like tank.
Well, then you could go in because you could change everything about the AI in the menus.
I love that. That's one of the features I really like is all that you can customize the AI and prioritize and tell
I never did it because it was too confusing and I didn't really think it helped me too much.
But if you want like it to do some of those silly combos,
yes,
you can have it happen. I love that. Like, that's one of the things I really like. You know, I don't think they ever really got rid of it, per se. Like, it was still in 2. I don't remember if it was in 3. But, like, it's a nice little feature, you know?
Yes.
Because there's so many things, like, when you're looking at just all the things you can level up your character to do, it can look kind of daunting. So the AI has to, like, know what to prioritize, you know, if you're going to unlock all that stuff for them. So...
But it was the level designs were good.
I mean, you know... For a dungeon-type environment.
Yes.
You know, I wouldn't say it's that difficult to design them. You just have to pace yourself, you know?
You say that.
Yeah.
But it's really easy to screw up, too.
It is easy to screw up. I mean, that's going back to Neverwinter Nights, I would just make environments in a way that I honestly think the developers of this game might have similarly done it. And so I can see, you know, I know how it works, how it doesn't. Like, when you're...
We're building it up a lot, and I really hope that it's worth it. And I'm, you know, the more you think about Dragon Age Origins, the more I sort of am softening on the other games because I like this game so much.
Well,
and you're just like,
I mean, I think that's the big thing is that this game was almost too good. Like, Origins was so good that it left you wanting more.
Yes.
Especially the way that certain plot detail... I mean, yeah, you save the day at the end in one of several different ways, but there are these little things like Morrigan and the kid, potentially.
Crystal Dragon Jesus baby.
Or the way that you've shaken the world. How will the governments, how will the organizations recover? You know, if you did something radical.
And it was one of those games where the ending was open and shut enough for it to feel satisfying, and give you... I happen to like games where before the ending credits roll, you have a little picture and it tells you what happens to all the characters.
Yeah.
I don't need to see like exactly what happened, but especially
well, yeah. I mean, that epilogue idea is something that this game definitely embraces. It's a very open and closed game.
yes. And even the DLCs. So we get into some of the DLCs.
Well, Awakening, I don't think there's that much to say about Awakening personally, just because it's an expansion, it builds, it's more Darkspawn, you know, some more characters. I mean, Anders is notable because he ended up being in Dragon Age 2.
But none of the other ones.
But yeah,
really.
it's fun, but it's what you would expect. It's more of Dragon Age Origins. The only other, I mean, there was a lot of DLC. The only other one that's of note,
Witch Hunt,
is Witch Hunt, because
Witch Hunt's great.
Well, here's the thing about Witch Hunt. Witch Hunt exists purely to remind you and hype up plot threads that you think will be important. The problem is Witch Hunt was made far enough down the line that they were working on Dragon Age 2, and basically nothing in Witch Hunt has a payoff in Dragon Age 2.
And it's awful.
And debatably in Dragon Age 3. So that, you know, we'll get into that. But I mean, that's all we...
But you get teased even more after the fact.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you...
It's like, the Dragon Age series is one big cock tease.
Kinda.
You get that one release at the end of the first one, and then you're
never again for the rest of your life.
But all the other games are just good enough that it escapes the majority of the criticism because they're.
I mean, a lot of people are.
Dragon
salty.
Age 2 gets a lot of more flack.
I think they both got a lot of salt. I mean, look, BioWare fans don't have a good rep. I don't want to get too much into that, but a lot of the fans were very angry in a way. This kind of predated the modern video game toxicity. Like, it was a few years before that. I almost feel like BioWare fans, like, originated getting hyper salty.
It speaks to the passion that the fans have about these games, because you form personal... Not just... BioWare really understands the interpersonal connection between the characters, and they do a very good job at keeping all the characters in their game interesting. I do not think they quite have a grasp on how many people and how much they love the world itself. Like, the characters are component parts, but I really like all of the lore. In Dragon Age, especially the first game. I could read the codex entries.
It's very well realized.
Everyone was like, I wonder where that particular plot point is going to go. And they strung you on for a little bit more and then stepped on your face.
Yeah, it hurt.
It is like having a parent lie to you, because I would have had no problem if they had left it. Morgan disappeared with this weird thing into the wild and was never heard of again. Yeah. And it's always something sort of like rumbling and wondering. But they hung whatever that filmography, they hung a lamppost on it?
What?
Hung a lantern on it? They like specifically talked about like, oh, she's going to the weird place with the Illuvian and there's stuff, and they're talking about that.
I mean, that's what Witch Hunt really sets up the thing about the mirror. Okay, quick refresher for both of us. In the Dalish Elf origin, the plot centers around this cursed artifact that's like a mirror. It's supposed to be like a gateway. And
they end up being like sort of like...
Well,
teleport.
Yeah, like it's some kind of a gateway type device, and it looks like
never really specified, which I kind of like.
They didn't specify it at the time. They go into more detail later. Yeah, but this mirror is cursed and it's bad and blah blah blah. And then in the Witch Hunt DLC, Morrigan is very interested in this mirror, and she, at the end of it, she goes through it to places unknown. And
you can choose to go in it with her.
You can,
or try to kill her.
Yeah, like,
in typical Grey Warden style.
But you might have a reason to.
Yes,
like that's what I like about it. And so even the last thing you do in Witch Hunt is very open ended and very like But
that's one of the nice things about Dragon Age Origins is the ending of the game. Really, what you were saying really dictates how you approach Witch Hunt. Either you're out because this woman betrayed you and stole a nuke, or stole Crystal Dragon Jesus baby from you, and you're trying to hunt her down. You're like, this jerk.
you're genuinely interested
Yes.
in finding her again, or you're dead and you can't do witch hunt because you died at the end of the first game. So I appreciate all those things, and it really does highlight a disconnect once we move on to Dragon Age 2, which is, I mean, we'll start with the lead up to it, I guess.
Dragon Age 2, if it had just been the demo, it probably would have been the best game ever made.
I really liked that demo. That demo was, I mean, Dragon Age 2...
Remember when there used to be demos?
I like demos.
I like demos a lot, too.
Yeah. They had a good demo, and the demo was more or less like the prologue of the game.
Yes.
And they
had the little... Did they tease the whole Varric sort of narrative thing?
Oh yeah, like the production value is higher, the game looks nicer, it has more of its own art style.
And that was one of the best changes, was going away from this muddy, terrible looking game to a... It's still terrible looking.
I mean, the graphics aren't better, but because the art style is more unique, it makes it look nicer. I think that what's really nice about it was the presentation was higher. We have the cutscenes are more... There's definitely an effort to make things like more badass.
Yes.
I'm not really sure whose idea it was, but they Hawk's got to be a badass.
And I think that was BioWare trying to broaden the appeal of the game.
Yeah, and I don't think that was necessarily a bad idea. The only thing about it that bothers me is in regular combat when I hit guys with the sword and they explode. That was weird. I didn't really like that. But yeah, the idea of like your movements are more dynamic, more acrobatic.
Yes.
I mean, it's not like we didn't. The combat didn't improve that much. It's faster.
I
like it more.
I think it's improved.
Well, the animations improve, but the actual combat is not. It's not. We don't go to being more of an action game. It's like it pretends to be an action
the same,
game.
but it's the same game. But like you're saying, like they changed up the animation stuff, that it made a huge difference.
More responsive. I mean, I definitely...
It feels like you're actually playing and not just queuing up commands.
The action elements are more present, and I do appreciate that. It works well with what they were trying to do. And I mean, the enemies...
We're getting all the compliments out of the way early.
Yeah, I mean, that opening act is a lot of fun.
Yes.
Because we start off with this, like, frame device where Varric is being interrogated, and...
But it's a framing device for a framing device. Yeah, device.
He's making it like this badass story, and then it's like, that's not what really happened. And then Hawk is just some refugee, his family, they're escaping.
But Hawk is just some farmer, I guess?
Well, he's either a soldier, he was at
Ostagar, he was at
or if he's a mage, he's just
hiding.
Chilling. Yeah. I mean, I did like playing as him. Like it's him or her. It's very different. I mean, you're a character. I wasn't a huge fan of just pilfering ideas from Mass Effect though, and that's where some of my issues with the game start to show. The dialogue wheel is not implemented as well, in my opinion, because they really... I don't like how you don't really have a neutral option. Your neutral option is
sarcastic.
Is to be a joker.
Is to be a huge asshole.
And I don't really like that. I like the idea of them trying to give Hawk 3 different personalities, and I like that it impacts his regular dialogue.
Yes.
That's a really nice touch. But sometimes I didn't want to be a joker, and I was. You don't always want to pick an up or down option. It just gets really boring, and that is a problem with Mass Effect. So you want to avoid that here. But
it really sort of tightened. It did what Mass Effect 2 tried to do, and tighten the story down and tighten all the characters that were...
Yeah, the core of the story is just you're exploring the life of Hawk as he goes from being a bum-ass refugee, he goes to the city-state of Kirkwall, and he becomes the champion. And we're just following his life and the repercussions, because we know that something really bad happened and they need him, and we don't know where he is. And so we have this tease, the frame story, and it was good enough that I was like, I wonder what's going to happen.
Yeah, it really sort of was like meanwhile in Kirkwall, sort of thing, where it was sort of like maybe a little bit of a subcurrent to maybe you could sort of diverge from what happened in
Yeah, I mean
Dragon
the
Age.
events. I mean the events of Dragon Age 1 happened really fast. Like most of this game takes place after.
Yes.
I think the time is a bit of a concern because this game takes place over like 10 years, but it feels like it takes place over 3.
Yeah, it feels like it takes place in like 6 months.
Yeah, there
So
are
it just
definitely
goes from shithole to shithole.
This is mostly a problem with the dev time, and I'm not going. A lot of people just say they didn't have enough time to work on it. I'm not that strict. I'm not that objective because the amount of time they had to make this game, you could have made a totally fine game. But I think from the onset they just decided to cut too many corners, or they felt they had to. More corners were cut than are necessary, in my opinion.
And for me, these are some of the stuff that I have started writing notes.
Yeah, it's note time, huh?
Note time.
All
Note time.
Well, we got to start somewhere specific, like...
Okay, I'll start somewhere very specific with my first note. The game feels unfinished.
Well, yes, as we were just saying, cutting corners, there are definitely aspects. The big aspect that everyone talked about in the reviews is we were talking about the dungeons in Origins. There's a serious lack of that kind of content. You are literally going in the same for... There was the house, there was the cave,
there was the beachfront area.
The beachfront, there was the sewer.
Yep.
There was maybe a different cave, but I can't think of more than 4 at most.
No, and that's really problematic. Do you remember when we were reading reviews for Dragon Age 2?
I do, the Metacritic reviews,
reviews.
The guy said, Kirkwall isn't a city so much as it is a collection of buildings, which doesn't... I mean, he's technically correct. You don't really... the game takes place mostly in the city, but it's not an explorable city like in a game like Yakuza, which I just played, or Grand Theft Auto.
And it really, it's not really. That's not really a fair.
Well, I'm not saying it needs to be.
It wouldn't be a fair comparison if that wasn't literally the only environment in the game.
Yeah.
Where it should feel like a living, breathing city.
Yeah.
Where but it's really just kind of claustrophobic.
Yeah, you're in good district, mid district, bad district, cave, beach. That's the whole game.
And I never got up to the Cloud District very often.
The Cloud District, wrong city.
When it's really kind of sad when Whiterun feels like a more fleshed out city than Kirkwall.
I mean,
because at least I could punch a guard in Whiterun.
Yeah,
Whiterun.
Well, that's the big problem. Is that Kirkwall is so static. Even though this game takes place over time and things happen, like the environments don't change. I mean, I remember the developers actually made fun of this after the game came out.
It's good to have contempt for your fans.
I was at a panel. They were talking about Dragon Age 3 before it was officially announced, and they talked about how there's a character, he lives in a mansion, and the Fenris's mansion.
Oh, yes.
And that mansion is used as like at least 4 dungeons, but it's also just his house where you can talk to him. And there's a dead body in one of the rooms, and you can go into this place over a 9-year in-game period, and that dead body is still there. Like, he never picked it up, it never decomposed. That's the level of like care like that went into, like, don't get me wrong, the areas that they did make, they look nice, but they're clearly not designed like you can't use these environments as generic locations because they have some very specific details.
Yes.
That's the big issue.
Where it's not like, you can change a set by just hanging the paintings on a different wall.
Yeah, like they could have... I mean, they kind of do that in the first Mass Effect, where they only have, like, 4 Uncharted World dungeons, and that was pretty bad. But they at least put a bunch of boxes and stuff to make them look different.
But in Mass Effect, I sort of... And this is me being a little bit of a Mass Effect apologist. Okay. I always felt that it made more sense in Mass Effect because everything would be modular.
You could make the case that these are prefabricated structures and ships.
Exactly.
So it does make some sense.
But it was very tedious. But Mass Effect is one of those games where the side missions don't necessarily feel as necessary.
Well, I mean, the content that you're doing there is not terribly long, whereas in Dragon Age, you're going to spend a long time going through dungeons you've done several times.
So there's we're talking about Mass Effect. Do you remember the broken mission in Mass Effect? It's Garrus's mission with Dr. Salion?
I don't remember that being broken.
It was broken.
Not for me. What do you mean?
no matter what, you have to kill him.
Yeah, but that's not an error. That's the way it's supposed to be.
I thought that was an error.
No,
I thought you were supposed to be able...
He always turns angry.
But then it's just pointless then.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's a good mission. No. Well, that's the funny thing is that in that game, that's like kind of weird. But in Dragon Age 2, there are missions that play out, and I would sit there and wonder, should I reload? Should I try to do it differently? Because I feel like I got a bad outcome to this quest, and I had no choice.
Yes.
I don't think I reloaded an RPG more than Dragon Age 2, because I would keep trying to figure out, did I do, especially in the third act, which we'll get to, I would go, I gotta reload, because I think I did something wrong.
A problem that I have with Dragon Age 2 is I have a hard time putting the game in order.
Well, that's the big problem, is the game is so samey because you go to the same few environments talking to the same people over and over, and the game tricks you into thinking this is happening over a really long period of time when it's clearly not.
And there are tricks that you can do with environments to show that.
Yeah.
Oblivion. Elder Scrolls Oblivion 2006.
Really? Now? What did they do?
In Bruma, there's Bruma, early game Bruma, and then there's Bruma where they're prepping for the invasion, and there's tons of troops everywhere.
They did.
And it feels like, we're getting ready for something, and then the invasion comes, and it's like, it's all busted up, there's like walls knocked down.
I mean, that's...
At the end of... In the main quest too, the whole center of the city is knocked down.
Yeah. I mean, the city does get attacked in the second act. The end of the second act is the Qunari attacking the city, and I don't really recall there being much in terms of like damage or anything that you see, because that's the other funny thing is that the game, like, did you think the game was going to end when you fight the Qunari leader?
Yes, I thought that was going to be the climax of the game.
Because it came out of nowhere. Like, you're fighting him, there's no negotiation. The whole chapter is about trying to diffuse the situation between the Qunari who are living in the city. Kirkwall's not a nice place. I like the idea of it, but the problem is it doesn't have quite enough personality for me.
I thought Denerim from Dragon Age Origins.
Denerim feels like a more real city. Like, it really does.
Dwarven crafts. Find me Dwarven crafts.
All those little touches are there, and they aren't in Kirkwall, even though the entire game takes place there. It's very odd. I mean, there are attempts to replicate it. They don't really work for me. You're jumping around, like, the attempt to kind of jump around through Hawke's life, it doesn't... I mean, we start, he's a refugee, he's got to get access to the city, you make some choices, then we fast forward a year.
Do you remember, you in the beginning, when you first get to Kirkwall, you pick the faction.
You pick if you want to work for the mercenaries or the thieves, the smugglers, to try to get your money.
And you don't even do anything.
No, because when we fast forward to a year later, we have already paid off our debt.
Yes.
The only difference is that there's one quest in Act 1 that you can do based on the faction.
Yes.
But that's it. Just one little quest.
But it seemed like that... you have to do you have to trick the shop.
You either have to kill some guy or... No, I'm not talking about the quest to start. Like, there's a quest in Act 1.
There should have... Yes, I know, but there should have been, like...
At least 3, like, come on.
Those should have been, like, you're working for the Underground, and it could have fleshed out, these are the people who really run the city. And, but it just feels like, stuff happened.
Whatever, it's over, and then you just... I mean, the whole object... I kind of like the first act of the game. I like that the objective is just to get money. Because especially in Dragon Age 1, you'd have so much goddamn money.
You get so much money.
So I like that your goal...
It's just sovereigns all over the place.
I love that your goal is just to get 50 sovereigns.
Yes.
It's pretty funny. You're just trying to get money from doing the quests, and they've paced out the rewards and such. And, then you just meet a bunch of people, and, you kind of form your party.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the first part of the story. But as soon as you start getting into the lore, it really starts to fall apart. I mean, the game has promise in its early stages, even as a departure from the first Dragon Age. I'm like, this is different, but I could get behind this if everything is going to have more heart and soul. Like, if they're going to try harder with the story, I'm okay with making some of these compromises. And I think that's what they were trying to do, for sure. But
it just gets odd. I mean, I guess we could talk about some of the characters like that you meet at this part of the game, because I feel like that's all Act 1 really is laying the groundwork. Who are the party members?
Yes, so you meet Evelyn in the beginning, and I like the idea. She was probably the most standout character for me in the game because of how unique she was. As sort of like, I always felt that she just sort of was more an acquaintance than a friend, and that she was sort of begrudgingly working with Hawk because, it's one of like, oh, I know he's not going to try and kill me, so...
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to have, like, a cop, basically. I mean, she's basically a cop. I like having a character who's that stringent. You didn't really have that as much. Like, the closest you had in the first game, Alistair would just kind of be like, you probably shouldn't do this, but he wouldn't do anything about it. I like that we were legit working with a cop because the police or the city watch is so bad that she would rather hang out with Hawk than actually work with them. I like that. She's kind of neat. I like her plot and everything. I like that it doesn't really... she has like character growth in a sense. I mean, it's about obviously she gets promoted and has more responsibility, but also her like moving on from her life.
Yes,
which is kind of neat. It's more personal than some of the other quests, I think.
But it never doesn't really have a satisfying.
Well, it's just like, is she gonna get married? Is she gonna get over the fact that her husband died? Her
shitty husband,
Sir Wesley Snipes.
Sir Wesley Snipes.
Yeah, Evelyn's quest it's about her, and you don't get super involved in it. But when you compare it to like, I mean, there's characters like Fenris who have their own kind of agency. Meryl, although
Meryl was designed specifically to be the waifu of
Meryl's
Dragon
the
Age
waifu?
2. Meryl is my Dragon Age 2 waifu.
I mean, it was her and Isabella.
But Isabella was a whore.
But there's people who are that shallow.
And I'm not saying that disrespectfully. She literally was a whore. You can double team her in the
It wasn't double team. No, it was a foursome.
You can foursome her in the bottom level of the...
You can't remember the name.
The Salty Splatoon?
No, it was...
The Black Crow?
The Black Pearl?
No, that's the ship from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Was it like the White Pearl?
The Pearl Necklace?
The glowing pearl? The Pearl Necklace is probably... I don't know. Look, okay. Oh, God. Yeah, quick refresher. Isabella was in the first game, and you could learn how to get duelist skills from her. You could also like play her at cards and have a foursome with her if you met the right circumstances. This wasn't easy to do, and you didn't see it at all. But you could range from having just sex with her to having a foursome under the right circumstances. That's quest variety.
Yes,
man.
That's and there's nothing like that in any that quest.
It's not even a quest. It's just talking.
That side bar
in
Dragon Age that sidebar in Dragon Age Origins is much more interesting than anything in Dragon Age Inquisition and Dragon Age 2.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. It's
because it's just so ludicrous. And
I was originally very excited to have like minor characters come back, like, oh, we have some links to the first game in the form of characters like Isabella and Meryl, who was in the first game as well, but only in the Elven origin.
Oh my!
Well, that's
God,
the thing. Like,
you're right.
Meryl was in that origin, so that's how she knows about the mirror. And so,
speaking of the mirror.
Yeah, the mirror, which was in the first game, comes back, and it's a large plot element in Meryl's side quests. Meryl is a elven mage who is using blood magic to do
She's
not bad things. She's a horrible person. Yeah, like, Meryl is kind of an interesting character, but she's like naive by accident. Like, it's like it didn't feel genuine.
No.
Like, she just is so dumb that she's using magic that's really risky
she
over
might as
and
well
over
have
again.
Been a blonde elf.
Oh, I mean, it didn't. Yeah, it was very frustrating because it didn't feel all that real. Like, you couldn't really sufficiently talk her out of. I mean, this highlights a problem with Dragon Age 2's quests in general. Is sometimes you have a lot of options to try to mold it a certain way, but it doesn't do anything. Like, Meryl's quest always results in
the mirror breaking.
Certain people die because of what she does. Yes. There's no way to manipulate this.
Nope.
And then the mirror, you can do all this stuff to try to make the mirror work again, but regardless of what happens, the mirror doesn't work. She either destroys the mirror because she realizes it was wrong, or it just doesn't work and there's no resolution. And this is a plot thread from the first game, so I'm like, why doesn't this go anywhere?
And it's
Morrigan isn't in the game. Like, remember, Morrigan's not in the game at all. Flemeth is in the game very, very briefly and does nothing. And so...
that's what Flemeth does in all of the games.
Yes, Flemeth has effectively done nothing.
Oh yeah, Flemeth.
Remember Flemeth?
Captain Janeway of the USS Voyager voices Flemeth.
Yeah.
An old, super powerful demon god thing.
Morrigan's mom is implied to be like something, whether it's a demon or just some ancient entity. So you don't mess with her. And you know...
But you can mess with her and nothing bad happens.
Well, I mean, you could fight her in the first game.
What if you just threw that amulet in in your cupboard? And Hawk even makes a joke about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing, is that he gets the amulet in the prologue. She gives it to him. You know, the idea is that the amulet will restore her life because you might have killed her. But even if you didn't, I don't really know what it does. Either way, you give this amulet to the Dalish because you're told to. But Hawk takes a year to do it. Like, because you flash forward a year.
Well, it just this game starts to get my frustration level higher, and I start to get angry, and I start to say stupid things.
Because even if it's more like the combat is more entertaining, but it is so much more repetitive.
And that's one of the things I harped on a bunch in my notes, is just how plain padded and repetitive this game
it's
was.
So I mean, not only does this game feel really padded, but like it's like what, a third the length of the first game. So this game is maybe like 30 hours, 30 hours, about as long as a Mass Effect game. But that's a huge drop-off.
Yes.
Compared to
And it's not nearly as interesting or deep as a Mass Effect game.
No, it's not as good, in my opinion. And it's not, I mean, like, this is where we get into the tricky thing of sequel versus on its own merits. And it's like Dragon Age 2 is very not good as a sequel. It's okay on its own merits. It's just very average.
I just think that on its own merits, it doesn't even tell an interesting enough story.
Well, that's the big problem, is the story is A, not very interesting.
Okay, so
B, doesn't wrap up satisfactorily at all.
And C, doesn't actually make any sense when you start to think about it.
I mean, the story is basically, I mean, the first act is the most interesting because it's just making money. You're making money and you become very wealthy.
What is the story of Dragon Age 2 in 30 seconds or less?
Hawk goes to a city where lots of people have problems with other people. Eventually, those people fight, and Hawk kills some big things. Then he does this again 3 years later, and then the game ends on the eve of a giant world-shaking event. The end. Like, that's the plot. The plot is so... I mean, like, you don't feel like you're moving anything forward. No. You just sit around and wait. Like, the first act, you're making money. You're raising money so you can go to the deep roads.
And I like that idea of, like, we were going to go on an expedition.
Expedition. Yeah.
Exhibition is a baseball game.
Yeah. And it's fine. Like, I like that it's a unique dungeon, even though it can be rehashed for another quest later. But you go to the deep roads. It is a fun part. You're going in, you know...
you meet Bowden, Fedek, and...
Yeah, Bowden and his son who...
Boom.
Yeah, like Sandal? Yeah,
Sandal.
These two very obscure, these minor characters from the first game, you know, they're there. It's kind of charming. You go in with Varric, the dwarf, you know, he's the guy
his brother.
Yeah.
And he's the one who's helping you bankroll this whole thing.
Yeah, like you go in to get that idol. The Red Lyrium is like the big...
Was Red Lyrium introduced in 2? Or was it in 1?
No, Red Lyrium is introduced in 2, and then it is eventually explained in 3. And the explanation for it is fine. It's very abrupt.
Here it is, Red Lyrium is stupid.
Red Lyrium becomes stupid. But it doesn't start stupid. Like, you go into that ancient...
Oh, I'm sorry, Red Lyrium is dumb.
You go into the ancient, Tig, and there's this red lyrium. The crystal lyrium is usually blue, but here it's red, and you're like, what's going on? This place is really ancient. And they never really explain it.
No.
Well, this stuff, I know this stuff eventually gets explained, but not in this game.
Does it?
Yeah.
Do I really need to have
No.
stuff happen in Dragon Age Inquisition to explain to me things that happen in Dragon Age 2?
I don't.
Shouldn't it be the other way around?
Well, I don't think that the Red Lyrium necessarily needed to be explained in like a super specific sense. It's just this place is bad juju. You know, you get the magic. It was some kind of idol.
It was like a statue.
Yeah, some kind of statue drives Varric's brother crazy, so you get stuck. But you get stuck for like 3 minutes.
Yes,
like,
it's like, oh no.
Like he leaves, but you got stuck for a very short period of time. And you do fight a boss. One of the game's like 3 bosses.
You
4.
fight
the golem.
Yes,
you fight the big red golem, which is kind of fun. And then he's guarding a shitload of treasure. Yes. And so you go home and you get rich. That was nice.
And then the whole rest of the game happens.
Yeah, Act 2 is where, like, I liked the idea of, we go from being poor to being rich. Like, it's going to be fun. We're going to be rich and blah, blah, blah.
And then the plot comes to a screeching halt. Like, literally, like...
It starts to become...
full...
Yeah.
Brakes on the train, sliding down the track.
They do a decent enough job of introducing, like, certain ideas. Like, there are Qunari who live here but don't want to be here. They won't leave. There is a lot of crime. There are a lot of rogue mages, and the Templars are really cracking down on them. These are, like, the groundwork threads that they lay. But then they suddenly... They just decide to make certain threads really important selectively. So Act 2 is, mostly about...
Act 2 really should be about the deterioration of Kirkwall.
I almost feel like the Qunari just shouldn't be in the game, because they're just a distraction.
Yes.
Like, the game should have really been entirely about the problem of, the rogues and the mages and the Templars, and how the civilization is getting worse. The city is getting worse. The government doesn't do anything.
The Templars are corrupt.
And
the city watches.
And Hawk is new money and can do something about
exactly.
And that's the stuff that I like.
It's so...
When we can make those calls and try to do those things, I enjoy the game. I don't enjoy a lot of the distractions. I don't enjoy how characters' plots don't really matter. It just feels like you're watching them do their own thing.
That's what I feel like a lot of Dragon Age 2 overall, though, is me watching something happen rather than me having impact on the world.
Yeah, I mean...
And in certain games, that's okay.
But it doesn't work here compared to what we used to do. I mean, Origins, you were just some schmuck, but by chance you can make huge impacts on the state of the world. And here, you barely influence the city, and it plays out in a predetermined path.
Yes.
The
ending's the same no matter what you do.
There's 2 endings which are functionally identical.
Yes.
And the overall outcome of the game,
and it isn't even like
is moot.
If I could see it, that the ending being at least like a little, like trying a little bit. If, like, say in Dragon Age 3, you just go to Kirkwall to find Hawk. Oh, where's Hawk? Oh, he's in Kirkwall. Why would he sided with the Templars and is leading them now? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, they don't even acknowledge that, like, at all. That's possible, but it doesn't get acknowledged. I mean, the ending is really bad. Like, it was so frustrating.
Let's talk about Osama bin Anders.
Anders, he's a recurring character. He was in Awakening. He's in this game. He's a very different character in Dragon Age 2. He's gone through a lot of off-screen drama.
Yes.
He's now he's half possessed now. He's a host for a spirit. He was always he was more of like a dashing rogue in the first game. Like he didn't like the rules. He didn't like the rules for mages. But here he's taken a lot more seriously.
Yes.
And he seems to be a lot more upset by it because he's in Kirkwall, which is a place where the mages are legitimately oppressed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's depressing.
Yeah.
And it's not like he always sort of put a nice spin on the situation. Now he's just so depressed.
Yeah,
and
he's had a bad time. He was a Grey Warden. It didn't work out. He just decided not to do it anymore, I guess.
Which I don't think you can do. I don't think...
They don't seem to care.
Yeah, the Grey Wardens are completely...
They don't seem to care that he
Was there another Dragon Age Origins DLC where you go to a Grey Warden tower and fight a bunch of things?
Yeah, but that was just there. Oh. That was just filler. So he becomes one of the more, I guess you could say, interesting characters because, he takes a hard ideological stance.
Yes, and he actually has opinions and expresses them. And you are sort of morally on his side.
Or you're not, because sometimes he says things that are a little too like he's a tough character to really get behind fully, because as the game goes on, his ideas are a little more.
I wonder.
We know where this is going.
Do you think he got radicalized on the internet?
But the internet unfortunately doesn't exist yet. But he's the most interesting character in the game. But and he's a character who I find myself really disliking, not as a character, but like personally. It's frustrating because,
he was also the most useful. Squad member to have because of fantasy.
That's true. He's the only healer.
Yes. Why do they keep making healing worse and worse in every Dragon Age game?
I don't know. He's the only person who can revive people. Other people can heal. Meryl can't heal, right?
No.
Okay. No, she can't.
No.
Okay, so Andrew's actually really useful.
Yes, that's why you can keep him around.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is that he's an interesting character because he just gets more and more down the rabbit hole, and you kind of watch this happen. Like, you don't stand there next to him and he says, "I'm going to be a jerk now."
Yeah,
it is more subtle, which I do. It's like something I like a lot about.
But if it's subtle, then you should be able to have a little bit of an effective.
This is the big problem: is when it comes
we're building up to
Act
the big problem.
3, you can't influence it.
No,
you can influence other characters a little here and there, but he's the one where it really needed to be a thing. Other characters, Fenris, we haven't really talked about him.
I don't talk about Fenris too much because I don't remember a lot about him. I didn't use him that much just because of the character that I played. He made it sort of redundant.
Yeah.
And he was a elven slave to a Tevinter mage.
The Tevinter, magistrate.
And then he just turned on him and murdered him. And
he didn't murder him. He escaped.
Yeah, that's right. He escaped because you fight him later in the game.
Yeah,
and he's just like a horrible human being for no reason.
He's a bad guy.
He's just I got you, Fenris, you evil elf. And you're just like, whoa.
Yeah, I kind of like the twist at the very end where his sister is just like, you wanted all this, right? Like, he doesn't remember his past. He's just assumed that he's been a horribly oppressed slave, but in reality, he submitted himself to that life to help his family. But
I don't even remember any of that.
Well, that's what happens because his sister is there. He's like, his sister is studying to be a mage. Like, she's gone up in society under his master.
If I get what she looks like, I'll remember. But...
She just looks like an elf.
Well, what? What are we talking about?
He's looking it up now on his phone. That's the great thing about this.
Yes.
Not remembering certain things about these games.
Well, because if I think too much about it and
I didn't take any notes. I remember all this.
I'm actually trying to stay as even-keeled as I can because this is one of those games that I just plain don't like.
I played it several times to try to get a rounded opinion of it. It's not a game that I can see myself going back to because it gets frustrating. Great example of a quest where there's really no variety is the quest involving Hawk's mother.
Oh, where she dies no matter what? Spoiler alert.
You can do a fair amount to try to figure it out as fast as possible, but she ends up getting killed by a
you can
horrendous blood
literally
mage.
Have your whole family get murdered.
You can,
and Hawk can still be a sarcastic way about.
Well, Mom, no way to save Mom.
No.
Absolutely no way, and it's kind of ridiculous. That's the one where you couldn't do anything. And it doesn't really add that much to the story. Hawk doesn't fundamentally change once that happens.
No.
The only thing that can change is you could try to roleplay him to be more of a dick. You can get mad at Aveline once and irrationally blame her, but that's about it. It doesn't really change things enough. And I find it very odd. I think they said in a developer post that, at one point they'd considered, but it was too important to the story. And I disagree. Hawk's mom dying is not important.
It's literally irrelevant to everything.
The only thing that Hawk's mom getting killed does is further cement mages as being
bad guys.
Bad. This is a huge problem with the game.
Every single mage.
Yeah.
Every single mage, other than Bethany, if you are not a mage yourself.
Yeah.
Is a bad guy.
Yeah. I couldn't remember like good guy mages. They didn't exist. They were either Tevinter jerks.
Yes.
They were blood mages. Almost everyone's a blood
everyone's
mage.
a blood mage.
Any mage that's suspected of blood magic
is a blood mage.
Even good guys use blood magic.
Even the main.
We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah, Meryl is a party member. She is a good character, in my opinion, but she uses blood magic just because she doesn't know that it's viewed as bad, even though it causes a lot of people around her to die eventually. Yes. There's a character in the quest line where you're looking for your mom, I think. He had the weird French name. He is a blood mage, or he was like an apprentice to the bad guy. He uses blood magic to try to find her, but he's a good guy. But
there's
he's still
the two mages that escape the tower who you go to help.
Yeah.
And they are blood mages and they betray you no matter what.
Yeah, like all these opportunities to remind, like, I mean, in Ferelden, it wasn't the problem.
No.
Like, you go to Ferelden because blood magic or just demons have shown up and it's a problem. But yeah, no, not every mage is bad just because this happens.
And it just sort of, in Ferelden, you can see both sides of the story. Where the Templars are like...
Yeah.
This could be awful.
But they're not making a statement. Like, it's not like they're saying that the force the Templars have put on the people has turned everyone to this. No, because it just happens.
And
yeah.
Yes, and they were sort of... I mean, they didn't really need to murder everyone. That was sort of the Night Cat, the commander wanting to take the easy way out.
I can understand it happening later on in the story. Like, people are getting turned towards this desperate stuff. But it starts happening so early that you're just like, everyone's bad.
Yes.
Characters that you can meet in the first act, and then you have a rapport with them throughout the whole game. In the third act, they'll just have been blood mages the whole time. It's like so underwhelming. Really horrible.
But this is like, the oppressive system. It's not like this is a new system.
No.
It's been going on.
But it's getting, yeah, I mean, it's not a new thing, but it's getting worse. But it doesn't get worse in a way that feels bad enough.
But it only gets worse because the people in charge of these programs are crazy people.
Exactly.
You can find, there's literally people there who are the reasonable people who are just like, let's get rid of...
There's not enough to establish why Meredith is like so... I mean, I know eventually there's a really bad excuse for it, which we'll get to, but there's not enough to explain why more and more mages are being made tranquil, just getting harassed, and... there's not enough to justify it because...
If it was sort of like some conspiracy where she was trying to spark... a rebellion because she hates mages and just wants to start killing them.
Yeah, but it doesn't even really feel like that. It's just the Templars are really big dicks, always. Not all of them. There's a few good... That's the funny thing. There are a few good Templars.
Yes.
But there are basically no good mages.
You even... The Templars, you free from the crazy mages who would have a legitimate reason to hate mages, end up being good guys.
Yeah, exactly. That's the funny thing, is that...
And then they just made him in the third game, they just made him the generic spooky bad guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's very odd. It doesn't feel... It feels very inconsistent. It doesn't feel like the writers knew what they wanted to say. That's very confusing.
That's another note that I have.
Yeah?
Actually, speaking of confusing and the writers not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
This is not the right page. The game is confusing and the writers didn't know what they were doing. Oh, what do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that if they really wanted the game to take place over a decade, then trying to condense all of that into a shorter game is really hard. But that's not what that's not the impression I get. I just feel like they didn't have a complete story for many of the quest lines.
Everything feels unresolved.
It's half-baked or unresolved.
And... It really... Dragon Age 2 really feels like it is the transfer point between Dragon Age 1 and Dragon Age 3, where it should be setting up... Like, if you aren't going to resolve stuff in this game, set it up for the next game and have the big payoff
which
for all the stuff.
They tried to do. There's a lot of attempts at set up for a bigger game at the end. But, I mean, we're forgetting one very important companion that we haven't talked about that I know you wanted to talk about a lot.
Can we talk about other companions first?
Well, who's left? I mean, we have the sibling. Hawk has a sibling, but whatever. They're just meant to be the opposite of you. It's not interesting. I don't know. I like that they can become a Grey Warden, but not much to talk about.
We talked about Varric.
Varric is cool.
Sabrina?
Isabella. she's there. Like, she's okay. She's kind of a fun character, and it got a little weird when she actually started mattering in the plot in Act 2.
Yeah, it took me out of it too much because it was so... And then she just leaves. I've never been able to figure out how to get her to stay. She always just leaves.
No, okay. You know what? I'm glad you reminded me of that, because the way to get her to stay involves doing all of her quests. The problem is her quest in Act 2, I'm pretty sure, can bug out and you just won't get it.
I see.
So that happened to me on 1 or 2 playthroughs. Yeah, like I think on the first playthrough I was really confused, so I reloaded because I'm like, why did she leave? Did I miss something? Did a bug happen? And I got lucky, and I could trigger the quest, and I did it. So I stopped her from leaving.
I've never gotten her not to leave.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think it's a bug. And yeah, I mean, Dragon Age 2 has a few bugs that stop certain quests from working properly.
Well,
that's
I can't really knock Dragon Age 2 on its amount of bugs, considering how buggy the next outing will be.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sign of things to come. But the worst kind of bug an RPG can have is something that locks content away. And yeah, I think that was a problem. There are a few quests where that happens. You can't resolve things fully, and it's really irritating.
I feel like we're missing someone.
There aren't that many companions.
I'm just trying to...
I don't want to talk about Felicia Day. I didn't like her at all.
Well, no,
she's only a companion in the DLC.
We haven't gotten to the DLC yet, which is... Yeah. That is... Talking about the DLC will be a good segue into talking about Dragon Age 3. But then there's one character that they decided to add, and it's probably something that I have the most opinions of.
Why do you have the most opinions about him? Like, the DLC party member? Like, why? I don't like him either, but...
He was just completely and utterly pointless.
Well, he's a big step back from Shale. Shale was
we didn't talk a lot about Shale.
Well, all we need to know about this is Shale was an entirely new class.
Yes.
She was a golem, and had a very interesting storyline, and changed the game a lot.
I'm gonna say the name Sebastian.
You hate Sebastian.
Even those words coming out of my mouth make my tongue taste like.
I don't like Sebastian because he's kind of boring and his quests kind of suck, but. I don't hate him as much as you. The thing was that, like, I played as an archer in my first playthrough of Dragon Age. You
played as an archer in 2. And he's the better archer in 2. He has access to stuff that you straight don't have. Well, and he makes you suck as an archer. It makes you completely redundant. And he's so boring. He's so vanilla. He's so uninteresting. He actually, like, Sebastian feels like someone put post-it notes on the original script of the game, and then Sebastian, some BioWare employee named Sebastian wrote some fan fiction about himself being in the game, and they decided to make that the DLC character. And it had some of the worst lines with some of the worst deliveries.
I think he's actually named after a BioWare employee. I could be wrong.
I hope that BioWare employee got fired.
Oh no, I feel bad. He is not great because he has a very generic storyline. Sebastian is a...
What happened to my family was murder.
Yeah, that's the first thing he says, really. He's a prince, but he was sent away to be a priest, so his whole family gets killed in a very conspiratorial way. And he's mad because he's caught between the faith and wanting to get revenge. And...
He's also a bigot.
I mean, I guess he's like kind of less bigoted than some other people in the game, but
less bigoted than Ashley Williams.
Yeah, well, that's not saying much. I mean, he kind of just
probably less bigoted than Navigator Preston.
What I don't like about Sebastian. Okay, so you have to buy Sebastian separately.
Yes,
he came out the same day the game did.
Yes,
and I'm just going to say really fast. I don't really remember there being a lot of backlash for Sebastian the way that there was for Javik in Mass Effect 3. But Javik is a far better character.
Every conceivable way.
Yeah, and much more worth the money, in my opinion.
Yes.
Sebastian is just garbage. Like, he sits around...
because I got the special edition, so I didn't have to worry about buying them because I'm a sucker.
Well, yeah, I mean, he just kind of wants revenge. He complains about it, and then
he complains about everything.
Then Hawk just goes out and kills some generic guys, and he gets revenge. And then, that's the funny thing is you don't get Sebastian until Act 2. Like,
Yes.
you're not allowed to get him until Act 2, even though you do a quest for him. So I find that a little weird. And then...
He also had just a poor, like, character design. He's like a balding white guy.
He does look like he's balding, but he's not old.
It was so not... He was so just not up to the task of being a party member.
He's
like, compared to everyone else.
He's not interesting enough.
He's literally out of every single squad member in every single modern BioWare game.
Yeah.
Karth Onasi is less obnoxious than Sebastian, because at least Karth Onasi was the plot.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is he is very ancillary. He inserts himself into the plot at the 11th hour.
Yeah.
Which
I'm gonna go to
that's the thing.
my castle.
His whole plot...
Well, I'm gonna bring an army, and they're gonna show you what to do.
Well, that's the whole problem with his storyline, is that he wants revenge, and then he wonders if he should go back to his city, because he's the prince, he's the heir, he could rule it. But he never does this. You never tell him what to do. Like, that's the thing, is he just sits there and says, I wonder if I should do these things. And then Hawk just says, yeah, good luck with that. And at the very, very last minute, there's a choice in the game, one of the later choices in the game that you can make. If you have Sebastian, if you paid for Sebastian and he's in your party...
paid for Sebastian.
I have to phrase it that way.
Yes.
If you paid for him and he's in your party, he'll be like, hey, I know you wanted to make this choice, but I'm going to throw a wrinkle into it, because if you do this thing, then I am going to leave the party and go get an army, and we'll come and destroy Kirkwall. And you're like, what? But you're just sitting around here complaining. Are you even sure you can do that?
He gets to his own, like, okay, I need an army. And they're like, who are you again?
So I got mad, and I told him to leave, because I'm just like, why don't you go do that? Like, the character, like, Sebastian, you've been sitting here, why don't you go do that? All right? Because you're at this point, you're just annoying. So he kind of steps on the end game a little for me, and that's what I don't like about him.
And it's very out of place.
It feels out of place. Like, I mean, he has a right to be upset because of what happens. But
I was upset too.
Well, I was upset for different reasons. Mm-hmm. Like, he has a reason to be upset, but it gets a little annoying because he doesn't feel as well integrated into the game as other characters do. I mean, Shale, very well implemented. I think Shale is actually free now. For some reason, Shale became completely free.
Really?
Yeah, so there's no reason to not have Shale. Either way, I thought that was kind of annoying. Sebastian, not a great addition, and he's a whole other party member in a game that already, it doesn't really, the party members, they have more uniqueness to them than in the first game, but there aren't as many, and they kind of, you got to pick and choose which ones you want.
I just don't think any of them were that memorable.
I think that they're a bunch of them are serviceable, but their plots are not. Like, I think the characters are okay, but the actual plots, they don't have the variety that makes them matter.
I want to address something, and it's something that's gonna come up in our discussion about Dragon Age Inquisition.
Yeah?
More than this game.
Right.
Is saying a BioWare game has good characters literally doesn't mean anything to me anymore.
Well,
because it's the only thing that BioWare does.
Well, I don't even know if that's true anymore, though. That's like saying Mario games have good level design. Yeah, well, they don't all, but...
play Mario Brothers 2 again. The super new Mario Brothers 2 Back to Baghdad.
Yeah, it's an issue of, like, they don't have the variety in terms of their quests to keep them interesting. And that's another big thing. Like, you could piss people off. You can't really piss people off here. You have the friendship and rivalry. They basically introduce their own version of Paragon, Renegade for each companion, and you can tilt them towards being your friend or being your rival.
I remember that they when they were advertising the game.
All it does is change some dialogue, but it really doesn't change anything.
But I remember they were saying, like, you could have, like, and for lack of a better term, they advertised as, like, angry sex with companions that you could romance rival characters, and it would be different.
All it does is change the dialogue before the sex scene, but it doesn't.
So you don't actually throw Aveline down a well.
Well, you can't have sex with her anyway.
For some reason, she don't want the Hawk D. She just wants.
She has reasons that I think are very obvious in the game, and you're being very insensitive. I think with more money and maybe a little more time, you could have had a much better game. But I don't know. But even if it was really good at what it was, it would not have been the sequel that fans wanted.
No, certainly not. Wherein Mass Effect 2 was everything that was good about the first Mass Effect, but better.
Yeah.
Dragon Age was everything that was bad about the first Dragon Age and worse.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really improve on strengths other than just kind of making the combat look nicer and go a little faster, but that's so, like, okay, you can have slightly better combat from the player perspective, but if you're fighting in the same environments against the same enemies over and over again...
That's a huge, big problem, too, is...
There's so few
waves and waves.
Yeah, the big problem, this is a really weird thing about this game, is that most of the times when you fight people... you get into a fight with the boss and his minions. You fight all of them, and then as you're fighting them, more waves of guys just appear from the sides to attack you. And this is how every encounter plays out: is you fight the original guys, you kill them, and you're fighting waves. And so, like, you can kill the boss, and then you just spend the next, like, 5-10 minutes fighting, like, 3 waves of guys with no name, just endless guys.
I remember all the terrible gang names.
Yeah, they try to mix it up by having the gang names, but they're all just the same, like 3 character models.
And you'd think you would stop attacking the dude who murdered 60 people the night before.
Yeah,
like if I was a gang leader and I read in the newspaper, Hawk murders 12 in Street Fight, I would be like...
Yeah, it's very awkward.
I mean, that's a kind of a stupid complaint. That's
well, it's just funny that, like...
video game logic.
But that's the thing, it's like the game doesn't change even at this point. When your character is literally the champion of the city, and he's still getting attacked by Goombas. Yep. It's very odd. It really does suffer a lot from this lack of feeling like the time is passing. Like, you don't feel like you grow. The game isn't long enough to make that work.
Oh, that was the point of the game? I always thought just...
Well, you're watching the growth of a champion, and then he becomes the champion, and then he has to make important decisions at Act 3. Act 3 was like 5 minutes long, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, wasn't it super short? I mean,
like I said, I have a hard time putting the game in order. Like, I know
it is short, because I remember starting Act 3, and then I took a break, and I came back like a day later, and I think I did the entirety of Act 3 in one session. It definitely has pacing problems. Most of it is
it's a lot of starting and stopping, like a motor.
Because they have to reintroduce, like, the principal leaders of the Templar and Mage factions, which end up being the ultimate conflict at the end of the story. You don't meet them until the climax of Act 2. You hear a lot of references to Knight Commander Meredith, and I think you can briefly see her in one cutscene early in the game, but Hawk doesn't meet her until they're in the battle. Yes. And then we also meet Orsino, the leader of the Mages. So we meet them at what's basically the last minute, because then we move on after we resolve Act 2 and we kill the Canary. We move on, or we don't, because you can just have him leave. But like, I don't know. The third act just starts with Orsino and Meredith arguing, and it's like, okay, well, I barely know who these people are.
You don't. It's just sort of like, oh yeah, there was sort of like the undercurrent of like the stuff going on like that, and it's just like, oh no, bad stuff's gonna happen, and oh, we need to finish this game. We have I've got dinner at 5 o'clock. We gotta finish this game.
I'm double parked.
Yes,
we gotta finish the video game now.
But which didn't make any sense because the game's already so short. Like, they could have taken their time.
That's the part that I think the build up. You were all brewing to this conflict, and it just gets out of control. Everyone is a blood mage. Everyone turns into an abomination, and this ultimately culminates. So we go back to Anders. Anders is like
Osama bin Anders.
Yeah, Anders is so Anders' quest in Act 3. He's already upset because he's like
his. Am I allowed to say gay lover?
He was probably gay. I don't really know, but
yeah, but doesn't he have?
I don't remember.
Like if you play as a gay character in Romance Anders, he talks. One of his friends gets lobotomized and made a tranquil.
No, that happens no matter what.
I know.
Okay,
but if it's his.
Yeah,
it's weird because Dragon Age 2 did that, and it makes talking about what actually happened kind of
it's hard.
Weird.
The romance is a really... Yeah, I mean, before we get in Act 3 proper, side thing. Romances are, like, handled really weirdly in 2 because you want to talk about cutting corners. I mean, it's this weird conflict where on the surface it seems like
it's really progressive.
Yeah, Dragon Age 2 seems like more progressive on the surface because every romance can be with every gender.
Yes.
But when I was playing the game and like experimenting with it and seeing how it was going to work, I was like, this almost feels really lazy because the dialogue isn't really.
It's the same.
Yeah, the dialogue's almost exactly the same. You know, they just put the model in. You don't have to create new animations or anything. And it makes the characters feel less consistent.
And that was my point about Anders was this character that I can't remember his name. The Tranquil that you say.
Yeah, the guy
it's when Justice first comes out.
Yeah.
And that guy. And it's either some dude he knows or his secret gay lover from his past, and that's like it should have been that.
Well, yeah.
Either way, and that makes it more impactful because if you are playing as a majority of the people for the first time, well, the stats bear it out. All the stats show that human males.
Yeah. I mean, people just kind of play as themselves most of the time, and they play the way that they would.
But it makes it. But if you play it that way, it makes that scene a lot less impactful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, that one, it's tougher to say with that one, but I do get the sense with other characters, it was a little odd.
Like with Isabel, it makes sense because
she's already confirmed to be bisexual, yes. I think. But when you do it with everyone, it's a little weird because, I mean, I would think that when you're writing a character, you probably decided.
It's a little bit of sensitive tide. Don't leave anything in that's really like me terrible because I'm not a terrible person.
No. You haven't said anything that I think is. I mean,
I don't want any of these queers in my Dragon Age game.
No, I'm not saying that. Like, I mean, it's totally fine to have options to cater to people, but it has to be consistent with the character.
And that's what I really liked about jumping ahead a little bit. Dragon Age
Inquisition does a much better job.
Characters like, what's her name?
Well, we don't remember the characters' names, but in Inquisition,
there's the straight one, the other straight one, the gay one, the lesbian.
But yeah, characters have consistent sexualities, and they even have racial preferences, which I gotta say that's more realistic, and it means that. Like, yeah, I mean, I think with Dragon Age 2, they were like, we just want the characters, or the players, to romance the characters. We don't want any obstacles. But I think that has the potential to get in the way of making the characters, like, true and be what they're supposed to be. Because I don't see all four of those romances and say, these are all written as being bi. I felt like it was shoved in.
Yes.
Almost. And I'm not saying that
like
I know...
Like a fist up the ass?
Ugh. I'm not saying I know what their orientations are, that I've declared it. I really don't care personally, but it did feel like a corner-cutting thing that people... That was done to be progressive, or was at least viewed that way. But I remember reading David Gator, the lead writer, he wrote... on the forum when they were talking about making the third game that romance is not candy. You can't just give it out to everybody. Yes. So I think they realized this was a mistake, and they changed it up a lot in 3.
If only they had learned some of the other mistakes.
Well, I think that whole candy analogy is really important because I mean, I think that if you're playing these games and you're emphasizing the romance, you might have your priorities a little mixed up because it's a nice icing on the cake. But
speaking of relevant topical things and talking about romance as a reward, Andromeda, which comes out.
Well, we'll see how they handle it. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, Mass Effect's approach is different from Dragon Age's, and that's fine. You gotta make the characters believable, and the characters in 2 are already really inconsistent with regards to their quests and their character arcs.
I don't even remember any of their quests. I remember going in an old house.
Yeah, you do that for like 8 of them. The same old house. And that's the problem is, it almost felt like it was done at the last minute. One of my favorite details, actually, is they released these screenshots and trailers that show the romance scenes. The characters in those romance scenes are either in underwear or completely naked, but they're obscured. Those character models, those aren't in the game. Ever.
What game?
Dragon Age 2.
I don't remember that, but I believe you.
There's screenshots of it, of like
I don't know why
Hawk
you lie
being
about something
naked,
like that.
Isabel being in underwear. They're not in the game, so those textures were made just for advertising the fact that
I hate
there's
that.
some sweet sex in this game.
There's some sweet medieval titties in this.
And I think that that's a case of putting the small things in front of the big things. Like the character interactions that have nice little arcs can be a good reward, but I don't really play a BioWare game to have sex with people.
No, that's why I play all those dating sims on Newgrounds.
You're alone. Anyway, moving on. I guess are we gonna get into Act 3 fully, or the Anders being bad? Like,
I would say that's a little bit of an understatement. He's not just bad. He goes off the deep end.
Well,
bad.
he wants you to collect some items for him so he can do a spell or something. And this spell, like, he won't explain what he's doing.
I just need some depleted uranium.
Yeah.
An unlicensed nuclear accelerator, a centrifuge.
It's very shady. And, once you get to the last step of it, which is essentially him taking these items and putting them somewhere. He wants you to distract someone so he can do that. He won't admit what he's doing, and you do have the option to end the quest right there and be like, I'm not going to do this because you're not being honest with me through everything we've done. This is always the same no matter what your relationship with him is. And so then we get to the end game. The end game is the same as the beginning of Act 3. Orsino and Meredith are arguing.
Yes.
So there's
nothing happens between the start of Act 3 and 90%.
It's just them
of
arguing.
The way, yes.
Yeah. So we get here, and basically what happens is, to those who play, you probably remember, Anders makes a medieval bomb that it looks like a Reaper attack.
It does look like
it's a giant explosion.
It's in the vein of a Marvel movie. It's a giant red death laser.
Yeah, he destroys the Chantry
with everyone in it,
and so this kills the mother, who is basically the mediator between the two factions. So he's
an accelerationist.
He basically forces bad things to happen by doing this. He's like, I'm done with just pretending this isn't a real problem. I'm done with mediation that isn't working. So he forces the hand of the Templars. The Templars decide right there and then, round every mage up and destroy them all.
Which I kind of sympathize with.
I was like, oh boy. So as a player, I was really mad at Anders. And you have the option to keep him on because you maybe forgive him, kill him, or tell him to get out. This is where Sebastian comes in. He won't let you keep him alive because you blew up the church, which is where he lived. Basically, the problem here was I freaked out, and I was like, maybe I should have not done the quest, I was trying to figure out, did I cause this massive thing to happen?
Nope.
So, no, this happens no matter what. You can ignore his quest completely. More importantly, unlike most companions in the game, you can actually make Anders leave your party in Act 2. And even if you do this, he just shows up at the end of Act 3 and blows this thing up with no context. So this is a great example of where they wrote these resolutions and they couldn't fill in the blanks.
It's just so out of character.
It's too extreme.
It's like literally flying a building into a side of a plane.
If he had just killed the mother, that would have been one thing.
Yes.
But he doesn't do that. He does a giant showy...
No, but that's even like... She's actually trying to help.
I know, but you could also make the case that he's kind of like... He's messed up because he's had this spirit in him for so long.
But you should have been like, hey, dude.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is this is a very extreme act for him to do. Happens out of nowhere. He basically becomes an antagonist. But then you can just forgive him and run around with him.
Well, and if you did that... If you forgave Anders and brought him with you, you are awful.
Well, that's the other funny thing, is if you tell him to leave, but you support the mages, because then you have to pick a side, and this determines the final battle. Not really, it's almost exactly the same no matter who you pick. But he'll be there for the final fight to help you. So we basically run around. The final battle of Act 3 is the inverse of the final battle in Act 2. Because in Act 2, you start at the bottom of the city.
And you have to get up to
the
champion, whatever.
The throne.
The mayor's office.
Yeah. In this, you start like...
the mayor's office.
The Viscount, yeah. In this, you just go the opposite way, where you go lower until you get to the...
The Grey Wardens are there randomly. But no.
We haven't even talked about that. We'll get into that after we wrap up Act 3, okay? So, yeah, I forgot about that. Wow. Basically...
What are you doing here? Don't worry about it. What do you mean, don't worry about it?
So they kind of like... You go, you fight Templars, you fight mages, no matter, like, you just fight stuff. Then you go, so Orsino and Meredith are there. You go to Orsino, whether you're his ally or you're his enemy, you go to him. And no matter what happens...
and this is a key point, because this is terrible writing.
So Orsino transforms into a giant fleshy monster.
The Harvester from that Golems of Agronoth that I really needed to talk about.
He turns into a monster from a Dragon Age 1 DLC, and it doesn't make any sense how he does this.
It's amazing with BioWare and their final bosses that are DLC characters from previous games.
Yeah, we'll come back to this too. But he turns into that thing, and I'm like, what? And so he turns into this when you confront him to fight him, but if you ally with him, he just does it.
It's so...
He's like, I'm gonna use blood magic for the first time ever, and just somehow turn into this thing.
You're just like, no, don't.
He just does it, and he's not even under like significant duress when you're allied with him. So it doesn't make any sense. And yeah, I mean, I know someone who restarted because they were like, Orsino's not a blood mage. I know this now. I'm going to help him. But he does it anyway. So...
I can't even imagine.
What happened here, in my opinion, is they had 2 final boss fights for each side that you picked, and someone decided, no, you need to fight both.
Yeah, because the game wasn't long enough.
So you fight the Harvester, you kill it, then you go outside, and Meredith and the Templars are there, and then Meredith is just, I was actually crazy!
Yes.
Look, remember the red lyrium idol? I have it in my sword. I turned it into a sword. I'm actually crazy and powered by red reaper lightning. And then you fight her, no matter what.
And it's like the final boss fight from the original Mass Effect.
It is! It's like Saren when he turns into a robot. Like, she does that, then the red lyrium starts turning these statues to life, which I actually think is a really cool, like, it's a cool set piece. I like it a lot.
It just didn't make any sense.
No, it made no sense. It's this huge fight. You're like, what's going on? And my favorite part is that this fight bugs out a lot for me, because the floor texture won't load, like, half the time I do it. If Carver, your brother, is there, his hair is completely white. There's no color applied to it. If other characters are there, like during the middle of the fight, Meredith does like the big blast thing, and you can't move while she's talking. But sometimes some characters will be attacking her while that's happening. Like that fight it's one of the most polished things and the least polished things in the game. So then you kill her. She turns into a friggin' statue. And then the game ends. And then we go back to the frame story from the very beginning. And Varric is talking to Cassandra, the Seeker. And so then he's like, well, I don't know where Hawk is now. But he's just gone. And Cassandra's like, well, we need him because serious stuff is happening. And then she goes outside. She was in his house the whole time.
They were just chilling out.
At Hawk's house. Then she goes outside. And Liliana from the first game is there.
For no reason at all!
Remember Liliana? She's there, and she's helping. Even though you could have killed her in Dragon Age 1. This is not acknowledged. Well, it's acknowledged, but it's never explained.
Well, the thing is that, like, in one of my playthroughs of Dragon Age 1, not only did I kill Liliana, I got the finisher where you chop off her head.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even make sense that I can understand the ashes healing some serious wounds. It does not heal getting your head chopped off.
It's never really fully explained, and I have no idea why, because Liliana, like, we'll segue, because this...
Lazy storytelling.
Yeah. Well, you say lazy, but this is the thing. If Liliana needed to be in the story for it to make sense, I would understand. But she has no consequence. No. So there's...
It literally could have been the Grinch.
It's just not a character. And this is the thing, we'll talk about this, because... we can segue into talking about how the characters from the first game are implemented into. So we have Liliana. She appears in the Sebastian DLC. It's the only interesting thing in it is that she's there, and you can say, "I thought you died." If she died, and
Yes!
she's just like, "I don't worry about it." So that's Liliana, and then there's Alistair. Of course, from the first game.
Everyone's favorite character, Alistair.
I mean, he's up there. I mean, he's not my favorite, but people like him. Ladies like him.
He's like him.
Morgan is just.
I don't know any ladies.
Morgan is just not in the game at all, so forget about her.
Yeah, like literally everyone's favorite character.
Yeah. Except there's no payoff after the first game. I mean, whatever.
And that's not the fans' fault.
I know. Well, basically, Alistair, if he's still a Grey Warden, he shows up during Act 2, during the big battle at the end of it.
And we're sure this is Act 2 and not the end of Act 3.
It doesn't even matter, honestly.
During a big battle where the city's on fire.
Yeah, so he shows up, and I got hyped, because I'm like, whoa, I don't know why he's here, but this is about to get real. And then he's like, well, we were here on business, and we have to leave, because there's something very important we have to do. But here's a ring. And he gives you a ring. And he just doesn't do anything. He leaves. No important things happen with him.
He can show up as the king, and nothing happens.
Yeah, I mean, he appears as the king for no reason.
And he makes a joke about swooping.
Yeah, because remember when he said that?
Yeah.
I do. It's basically like fan service. Like, the characters don't appear to advance the story like some of them do in the Mass Effect games. They're just there to be there, really. Other than Anders, but that's not fan service. That's just, he is a returning character for legitimate reasons.
He's literally fan disservice.
He's fan disservice, yeah. Just ruining everything.
Elf guy shows up.
Zevran
there you
has
go.
a quest. Zevran appears. He has a pretty brief quest. And then it ends, but then he can, if you do his quest, he appears during the final battle with Meredith, no context. He's just in the arena fighting, and they don't explain it. Like, that's another great example of just unfinished. Like, why are these things happening? It's very rare to see a game, like an RPG like that, where that's not even explained. I don't know why he appears. It really doesn't make sense. Yeah, they don't do a lot with what you want. Like, as far as stuff from the first game, you do have a lot of those issues. When characters show up, it's kind of confusing or weird. Liliana still being alive was, like, really baffling to me at the time. I mean, can you imagine playing Mass Effect and Rex doesn't die in the first game? If you killed Rex and he's still around? Like, that'd be so goddamn lazy. And Liliana doesn't even do anything important in future games, so it's like almost insulting to me. That's something I got really angry about.
And it wouldn't be for the fact that it isn't something that BioWare says. Not only do people like, oh, BioWare's really good at maintaining the story through the whole thing, that's one of the selling points of the game.
Yeah, you're buying this game because you know they're gonna have a good handle on this, and I don't know. I mean, when it came to implementing a save file transfer, which they did, it's almost a failure. I mean, when you look at how much stuff from Mass Effect is imported, I mean, you can argue about whether or not the way it's referenced is meaningful, but they are keeping track of it, and they are employing it. You look at Dragon Age 1 to 2, they keep track of basically nothing, and the things that they bring in don't really affect anything.
There's literally like a tiny side quest where they reference that we used to be werewolves.
Yeah, like,
and you're just like, what?
The content is very, very small.
And you keep waiting for stuff to come around.
It never does.
And it never does. And it's extremely infuriating. It makes the game very, very, like, rage-inducing when you play it again.
Yeah, on repeat playthroughs, the game ends badly. Like, once I beat the game, I was really confused. But on repeat playthroughs, the lack of choices by comparison to the first game really shines through, and it just gets frustrating. I mean, I played the game a lot because I needed to just see how much content was there. You know, it's not very long.
I played the game a lot because I hate myself.
Dragon Age 2 is a frustrating game.
Yes.
You want to talk about the DLC that I stupidly bought?
I will defer to your expertise because I did not buy any of them. I've watched a YouTube video of the final cutscene from...
There were two. There was Legacy, and there was Mark of the Assassin.
Legacy.
Okay.
That's the one with... What's his name, right?
With the guy who will be in Dragon Age 3, yes.
Yes, I watched the final, and I've listened to you complain about
Yeah.
Mark of the Assassin a lot.
Oh yeah, no. So Legacy was the first of two. Okay, so we have a grand total of 3 DLCs, story DLCs. There are some items, but who cares? So with the DLCs, we have Sebastian's DLC, we have Legacy, and we have Mark of the Assassin. Legacy is supposed to be all about filling in Hawk's backstory, because it's referenced here and there. He has a family, his mom is in the game, so we know a bit about his dad. His dad is dead.
The only thing I know about Hawk's backstory is if that Hawk is a mage and the Grey Warden was a mage, he is related to the Grey Warden in some way.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if Hawk's a mage, but his family, because
I guess, yes.
His Hawk's mother's side are the MLs.
So it was a maternal grandfather.
Yeah, so the Warden can be related to Hawk's lineage. But either way, this story is more about his dad, because his dad was a mage, and so his dad presumably taught.
Yeah.
Yeah, his dad taught his, the mage
How to
kids
juggle.
everything they know, how to juggle, how to hide it. So that's what he did. So the DLC is basically just him kind of learning more about that, because there's this old prison out in the mountains. It's a big dungeon. You fight the Darkspawn again. They're not really in Dragon Age 2 for much, so it's kind of nice to fight them.
Yeah, you fight them in...
You only fight the Hurlocks and the Ogre.
Yes.
You don't find any other types, so they reintroduce all the types and they look a lot cooler. So I like that. So we fight them. We go into this big dungeon. It's in the mountains. There are these crazy dwarf cultists who want Hawk's blood for some reason. So we discover that this old dungeon, it's a prison. The Wardens created a giant prison to keep something there, which we'll find out more about later. And it's sealed using demonic pacts and Hawk blood. Because his dad was a mage. He used the magic to seal it. He worked for the Grey Wardens to do this. He wasn't a Grey Warden, but he was helping them. So
He was a subcontractor.
yeah, he was doing that to keep his family safe and stuff. So, that's like the tie-in to Hawk. Basically, once you get to the top of this thing, there's 2 Grey Wardens, and 1 Grey Warden wants to unleash the thing that is being kept. The thing that is being kept is Corypheus. Corypheus is he's basically a Darkspawn, but he is implied to be one of the people whose magic spells back in the Tevinter days accidentally let them out. Like, he kind of inadvertently created them. He let them out from wherever they existed.
I thought he was one of the original guys to go into the Golden City.
Yeah, but that let them out. Like, that either... The Chantry says that these guys tried to go into the Golden City, which is where God exists, and they became tainted.
Our God
But he claims
is an
that...
awesome
Oh,
God.
we opened it up.
He lives from heaven above.
You're ruining everything. You're just saying things.
Well, I feel like I don't have anything to talk about because
we'll get there.
None of this DLC interested me in the slightest.
Well, you can say that once I'm done explaining this.
I'd rather say it while you're explaining it and talk over you.
So, Corypheus, he's a bad thing, created one of the first Darkspawn. He's basically like almost a demon. He's intelligent, but one of the Grey Wardens wants to control him. Like, they have a spell that can control him. The other's like, no, don't do it. So you side with one of them, and then you go in and fight Corypheus. So he's a big boss fight. He's just standing there like a confused old man, but he's all weird looking. So you fight him. It's a big fight. It's kind of neat that, like, oh, this is like what the original progenitors of the Darkspawn might have looked like. So it's kind of some neat lore building there, I think. But when you beat him, he just disappears. He's beaten, and then whichever warden that
he possesses them.
Yeah, whichever warden that you help is just like, yay, I'm obviously not possessed by Corypheus because he just entered my body, and they leave, and you don't do anything about
I'm
it.
speaking in a very monotone way now.
Yeah.
Thank you for your help, Warden.
It's made deliberately obvious.
Yes.
But Hawk doesn't do anything about it.
But yeah, Hawk is literally too stupid to realize.
So and then it just ends. And so I didn't really, I didn't think that this was going to go anywhere. I ended up being very wrong, partially because by the time Inquisition came out, I'd forgotten all about that. It's got some fun gameplay because cool puzzles and things.
I mean, it must have been nice to have had a unique environment.
Yeah.
To play in.
Yeah, I mean, I'd give them points. They created unique environments for once. And so that's fun.
I want to you talk about fun. I want you to talk about something more awful because I want you to talk about Mark of the Assassin and your favoriteest character of all time.
Mark of the Assassin was... God damn, did I hate this DLC. It's tough because it is creative. It's more creative than the original game.
That doesn't sound that difficult to do.
It adds new things, but I had two big problems. Number one, the entire premise is basically plagiarized from a DLC for Mass Effect 2, which had only come out like 6 or 9 months earlier.
The Kasumi one?
Yeah, it is the Kasumi DLC. It's the exact same premise. Two, the big draw of this was that you had a new party member that you only used in this DLC. She was a rogue. She was modeled after and played by Felicia Day.
Do you remember Felicia Day? She went on to have a great career and is still famous and acting in movies today.
If you're a giant nerd, you probably know who she is. Like if you're one of those weirdos who like loves being a nerd. I don't know. Look, nothing against her. I hated the character so much. She was just incredibly snarky. She was almost at like Mary Sue levels of snark, like self-insert original character. It was pretty bad. I just remember really not liking her. But the DLC is like, you go to a palace, you mingle with the guests, you sneak into the vault, you do all these things that we did as Commander Shepard, and so that the uncreativity was really annoying. It's got some stuff to do with the Canary, I don't really feel like it adds anything to the lore, honestly, and it sucked, and I hated it, and that was it. They never did anything after. They were supposed
to do a third one.
There was supposed to be a third one called Exalted March, and this was supposed to actually tie in to the plot of the third game, which, holy shit, we really needed something like that.
You did, you really felt it at the beginning of 3.
Yeah, because, boy oh boy, the beginning of 3 is super rushed. They didn't do it because they needed time, because 3 was going to be in the Frostbite engine, whole new, took a lot of scale, a lot of time to make 3. 3 clearly had a lot more money and time behind it.
If only it had more work behind it.
Because it's more late, it's so boring.
Alright, now I think it's time to close the coffin on Dragon Age 2 and dig up another corpse.
Yeah,
because
this is an autopsy of this game.
Dragon Age 3 is probably the most boring game I've ever played.
Well, I don't know if I can go that far, but it was... there were times playing this game where I felt brain dead. There really were.
It's a game in a series that I love, despite the fact how much I didn't like Dragon Age 2. I still love the Dragon Age games.
3, however... Oh my god.
3 is literally it's in the wilderness. No pun intended.
Yeah.
But it's big and bloated and boring and none of the characters are memorable, none of the locations are memorable, none of the story is memorable. It might be the glitchiest AAA game I've played in a very long time.
It's the buggiest BioWare game I've ever played. I was shocked at how buggy it was. And I played the game many months after it first released, so...
I played it while it was coming out.
Yeah.
I played it day one. I got it because it looked... And I think that Dragon Age 2 sticks in my craw a little bit less because I didn't know really what to expect from the sequel. Yeah. But this game looked like it had learned all the lessons and learned from the mistakes that it made in Dragon Age 2.
Yeah. And it did, but in their rush to correct these mistakes, they forgot how to make an interesting game.
They forgot to make a fun game.
And they forgot to make a story. Like
this game has no story.
Yeah, Inquisition.
It has nothing.
I know that's almost like a pedantic complaint to throw out, like there's no story. No, like the beginning is rushed to hell, the middle is just nothing like happens, and it ends so clumsily. It just stops.
It does pick up
pretty well
where Dragon Age 2 leaves off.
Yeah, I mean, the conflict that happened in that game sparked unrest everywhere.
And then there's another terrorist attack. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, it really does begin with the exact same scenario now that you mention it. Like, now the whole world's mages and Templars are meeting to mediate, and something explodes the Pope. The Pope of this universe gets blown up.
The Dragon Age Pope.
Yeah, but it's a green explosion instead of a red
And it's a
one.
girl Pope. So it's
Well, it was a girl last
It's
time.
a Popette.
A Popette, is that the correct
Yes,
term?
it would be Popes and Popettes.
The Popette dies.
Popette.
We are playing as... we kind of revert back to an attempt to emulate the character creation of the first game. Because we can pick from 4 races. Instead of 3, we can be human, we can be an elf, we can be a dwarf, but now we can be a Qunari. And when we pick one of these, we are given a backstory, but we don't play it, it's just there.
Yes.
You know? So this is nice.
I don't know, I mean, I understand why the game starts with an explosion, and literally the only interesting thing about Dragon Age 3 is on the title screen when you go to load it up for the first time, and you press the start button, it explodes.
That's true.
And you're just like, oh, that's interesting. And then it's sort of, you start out and you're already under arrest, or do you play a little bit before?
No, it's right after. It's after you don't remember what happens, but your character is just some guard.
Yes,
you were just guarding the Pope.
Yeah, you were the Popette.
The Popette. And then you interfere as a big, scary, bad guy who we don't know at this point.
Yeah, they leave him obscure for literally no reason.
We don't know who this bad guy is, but he is using a magic orb to make the Popette explode. I'm sorry, like, to people who like this game and like remember the story.
I do not understand you at all.
Like, we're gonna be taking some liberties because I really don't remember the game very well.
No, and I played a pretty big decent chunk of it. I tried to stop. I played it once all the way through. My dwarven inquisitor, who looked like Nigel Thornberry, and it was literally the only thing that kept me playing through the game. Was every time they would show him, he had his buck teeth and his huge nose, and it made me laugh.
Yeah, I mean, that's really sad. But yeah, like, I played the whole game through. I tried to do every piece of content I could, and then I tried to do a second playthrough, but I gave up.
I got through maybe half of the first area, which was... What was the first area?
Hinterlands.
The Hinterlands.
Yeah.
And then I was like, am I insane?
Oh, well, that was my thing on my second playthrough. Okay, so we should start. The biggest thing that this game did was we had too few environments in 2. Let's create gigantic, like, Skyrim-esque zones. Like, we're talking really large MMO areas. And that's really... The whole game feels like an MMO without any, like...
social interaction.
Yeah, you're just alone in an MMO doing quests with no plot.
You're alone in an MMO world with witty banter between your squad members and people shouting, "Get that warrior!"
Yeah, that's the... Isn't it crazy how the first game has the most enemy variety?
Yes.
I still can't believe that. I mean, there's not much to say about that other than it just does. Like, you fight humans, or you fight... Especially in this game, like, we talked about how you have the Darkspawn, then you only fight 2 Darkspawn in Dragon Age 2. In this game, the Darkspawn that you do fight, like, occasionally you'll fight Hurlocks.
I don't even remember Darkspawn in 3.
There's a few areas where you can fight Hurlocks, and they have the same rig and animations of the regular human enemies. There's no attempt to even make them interesting.
See, this is stuff that you pick up more than me, but I don't remember the Darkspawn at all.
They're barely in it, so I don't blame you. Yeah, that's the big problem, is your quests are all like, kill 8 of these, collect a bunch of these, go to this place.
And some of the stuff has some interesting...
Well, there's no variety. No. Like, there's very few quests that actually have multiple resolutions.
Do you remember how bad the scanning used to be when it first came out?
Well, I didn't have it when it first came out.
You would like...
I know you click in on the stick and it makes a pulse that shows you what you can interact with.
It used to be much slower.
Oh, wow.
And it used to not highlight the stuff.
Oh.
It would glow for a second, and then... I might be remembering this wrong. If I'm remembering this wrong, you can yell at me in the comments. But it used to be way worse when it came out, and it made an already boring game even more tedious.
Mindlessly.
And you didn't even need to pick up any of that stuff.
No.
But you felt like you needed to because for some reason, in their infinite wisdom, they decided to eliminate the one branch of magic that was the only useful branch, and that was the healing.
I didn't even know they got rid of healing.
Yes.
I forgot. I played as a mage and I forgot that.
Yes. You had like 5 healing tonics that you could do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, they did do that.
It just made a sloggy game more sloggy. Like, I would start to run low on healing, and I just feel like, oh, I need to go back to base.
Yeah, you didn't heal once you finished combat anymore.
No.
Yeah, this is the only game where you didn't regenerate all your health once you finished an encounter. Which I don't think was something that people disliked.
No.
There are plenty of RPGs that were a lot like, random example, the Xenoblade games, all the health that you have is for that fight. It's not really your HP so much as your will to fight. Like, you don't have potions, there may be some healing skills, but it's all about, can you outlast them with what you've got? You can't win a fight by spamming potions, you know? And so I don't think anyone minded that, you know, they kind of took that stance. I mean, yeah, there are potions in the Dragon Age games, but there's nothing wrong with healing.
They were not potions. They were healing salves.
Yes.
Healing salves that you drank.
Yes, yeah. You drank bandages and suture. Yeah, it was really stupid. All that regenerating your health does in this instance means, oh, I'll never be spamming potions and have to leave and come back. Which is a completely fine concession, because there's no real threat to leaving. Like, you're not punished for leaving, it just wastes your time.
Yes.
But they did it here where it was kind of annoying. Yeah, you don't regenerate your health. Running around is just boring. Like, you move slowly. You have the worst jump I've ever seen. It's like a bad animation, and half the time when I'm jumping, I feel like I'm like clipping through the environment. Like I'm jumping up invisible walls.
Because you jump like... It's almost like an old-style game where there's no momentum.
It's like Oblivion.
Yes.
It's like jumping in an
Elder Scrolls game. At least in Oblivion, if you leveled up your acrobatics, you could do crazy physics-breaking things.
Yeah, but it's like...
You could jump forward and float backwards. Oh my god, Oblivion.
Yeah, I mean... So, yeah, I mean, the sense of adventure, like, trying to bring adventure elements, failed completely.
Yes. Oh, it's completely...
I don't feel like I'm adventuring through the land.
I didn't even feel like the horse was that much faster than walking.
Oh,
it actually made it harder because you couldn't get in small shortcut areas.
Yeah, there's all these... Yeah, there's just so much empty space. And they created a lot of biomes. Like, this is the most diverse as far as the biomes. There's deserts. There's
unprecedented diversity.
There's lush jungles. There's the lowlands, the highlands, the places
and
that
the
are
environments, dark. I played it on the computer.
It looks nice.
It looks amazing.
I wouldn't say amazing, but it looks very nice. I mean, environmental details look really nice. Don't get me wrong.
Like the level where it's the battle and the stuff's like half on fire and the trenches and like that. It looked visually impressive.
Yeah, nothing there. Nothing of substance there. You don't even have to go to all the places. Like, that's the worst part, is that the way progression works, in Dragon Age 1, it's about go to the places and do the big quests. In 2, it's just do every quest until the game ends.
Yes.
In 3...
Go do whatever you want, I don't care.
In 3, they basically introduce a resource called power. So remember, the idea is...
Of course.
You're in charge of an organization that you just found spontaneously. Like,
no, you don't even found it. You have nothing to do with it.
Well,
this is all Cassandra's
after you see the guy blow up the Popet, they're like, we're going to start the Inquisition. We're just a bunch of weirdos with swords, Deus Volts.
Yeah, and it doesn't like... and like Inquisition.
Yeah.
In this... this might be more of an American thing, but it's an English thing. It doesn't exactly have the best connotation. Like, when I think Inquisition, I think Spanish guys burning Jews.
Well, I mean, I like that old-timey idea of, like, not the Spanish, but, like, what they're trying to say. I mean,
but Inquisitors...
These guys who go around and render judgment. But you don't really do that at all. Like, you don't do that. You just...
A game... and
you become a Grey Warden, but without any of the mythos to make Grey Wardens interesting, in my opinion.
And without any of the stakes.
Well, the stakes are higher than they've ever been. Because
are they?
The threat in this game is just the threat from Oblivion. The bad guy
is the Oblivion crisis.
Yeah, a bad guy is making green holes in the sky that demons come out of. It's literally the same thing from Oblivion, except they were red. And that's really frustrating. Like, that they did that. It's a lazy plot. And yeah, you just run around, you do quests, or you just touch things like to set up camps in the environment, and you get power points. And this power resource is basically how you progress now. You know, to do a story event, you need X power.
Yes.
So if you can just figure out how to get power as quickly as possible, you're better off doing that. Like,
I actually wanted to play the game, and so I was
Right.
just doing the missions.
yeah.
And there's just nothing there.
No.
There's just nothing in my brain that, not a single line of dialogue,
Yeah. It becomes a bunch of checklists.
Yes.
Close these rifts,
Yes.
set up these camps, collect the 8 things, collect the pieces of glass. It's do the constellation, like all that crap. It's just busy work. I don't like the amount of work that was put into it is like almost negligible. And I wouldn't say that a decent amount of work was put into them.
No, and it feels like these worlds are fully realized. They're just not interesting.
Yeah, I mean their priority
It's
was
like
on
driving
giving,
through North Dakota.
the priority was on giving you fluff to do. It wasn't
Yes.
on giving you tangible quests to do. And it's really unfortunate. And I mean, I think we're both worried that Mass Effect Andromeda might end up this way.
I've always joked that Mass Effect Andromeda was going to be Mass Effect Inquisition or Dragon Age Andromeda.
Yeah. So we don't know, but
And I don't think that, because I don't think that people have come out vehemently enough against Dragon Age Inquisition. Like, it's sort of one of
won
those...
Game of the Year at the Game Awards.
Holy...
And
Hey,
I was
Game
shocked.
Awards, people. Get a life.
I don't know why they did that. I mean, they were shocked.
Do you think that there's unethical things going on in the video game industry?
Like this game, people liked it. It did get some awards, but when I completed it, I was like shocked, and I just remember going online and being like, do people like this game? Like, I needed to know what fans were saying.
One of my notes,
Yeah.
and I think I personally think it's funny.
Yeah.
My analogy for Dragon Age was Dragon Age is like overinflating a balloon, and you're just waiting for it to climactically pop.
Yeah.
But instead of popping, you just let go of the stem, and it went
Yeah, I mean, we never
around the room.
We never got that climax.
No.
We didn't get the pop. Especially with this game.
And I think it's interesting that we both
Yeah.
played different ways through the game.
Did we really?
Yeah, well, I sided with the Templars.
Oh, well, that's the only thing I like about the game, is that at the beginning of the game, the first big plot decision that you make, you have a choice, and each mission is different.
Yes.
And each mission results in you getting a party member early. So it's very cool. I
Yeah,
like
you
that.
either get Dorian
You get
or
that guy, or you get
the weird guy.
Cole,
Yeah.
the ghost.
Ghost Child.
Yeah.
Ghost Kid. Gaspar.
Yeah, no, so the thing about that, I like that, but the rest of the game doesn't follow up on it at all.
But I sided with the Templars.
Yeah.
But the majority of the bad guys were just the Templars anyway.
Well, that's the
and they're like, oh, it's a rogue faction. I'm like, how many fucking Templars are there?
The big problem is that, yeah, you do this initial faction mission. You get either the mages or the Templars to help you. And this is supposed to set up who the bad guy gets as his main army. But to my knowledge, this doesn't really impact the game at all. Like, if you ally with the Templars, you're still going to be fighting a lot of Red Templars.
All the Red Templars.
You're still going to be fighting a lot of rogue mages.
Yes, all the rogue mages.
The only thing that this changes are some enemies, but it also changes his henchmen. The main bad guy. Okay, the main bad guy is Corypheus, who we mentioned earlier. I was like shocked. I'm like, wait, that guy?
I had to Google him.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this seems like someone who was already in the game, because it's too weird to be a new character.
Yeah, like, he's introduced in such an unclimactic way, you just cut and you're staring at him. Like, who? Wait, this guy? I thought it wasn't him. I'm like, is it a guy who looks like him? And it was, and I was shocked. And so I think that's kind of... I mean, they were setting up this villain, I guess, in the DLC, but it didn't feel like it because so much time had passed.
And also nobody played the DLC.
And he's not interesting. That's the thing is, this is the only Dragon Age game that I would say has a clear villain. I think I said this in my Fast Impressions that I did a long time ago. It's the only one with a villain, you know, but he's just a lame moo-hoo-ha-ha villain.
He's literally like...
Yeah.
I'm going to destroy the world because...
I just want to do this thing, blah.
Yeah.
Like, it's really lame, and you just don't feel a connection to him. He doesn't... Like, Loghain, like, yeah, he was the antagonist in the first game, but, like, a lot of what he did... He had his reasons, and they are understandable
you look
at his mindset.
He wanted to build a wall around Ferelden and make your legions play for it.
He was worried about a lot of stuff that could have happened if things were different.
And ended up actually kind of happening. It's sort of referred to
like it
they keep setting things up in Dragon Age, and I don't care anymore.
No, I'm done. Like, that's the big problem. I mean, the ending of this game, not even the ending, because it just stops. Like, you do some quests, nobody cares, the bad guy says, it's time to fight me, and you go fight him, and then you beat him, and the game just stops. It's so lame. Now, we should mention, the penultimate mission is like the more interesting thing, because Morgan is in it. Like, Morgan and Flemeth show up.
Morgan and Flemeth show up?
So these mirrors, remember the fucking mirrors?
No!
Well, the mirrors are portals to like a pocket dimension that has a bunch of mirrors, and you can use those to teleport around. They're ancient elven artifacts.
Ancient aliens?
Basically, at this point.
So, wait, no, but they're real.
Yeah, they're real.
Spoiler alert.
So Flemeth is just... So, basically, like, if you have the kid... Because remember, Morgan's kid is going to be like 8 to 10 years old at this point. The, kid with the dark god soul in him.
Crystal dragon Jesus baby.
And this doesn't really end up mattering at all. It doesn't have any effect on the story. Because all that happens is it gets negated. Like, Flemeth shows up, takes the kid, and just takes the power out of him and just, like, eats it.
Yeah.
And she doesn't do anything in the game, so it's totally irrelevant. Like, these plot threads that have been dangling for a long time are just burnt. They're not tied up, they're not connected, they're not propelled forward, they're burnt. Flemeth is explained finally. We know who Flemeth is.
But I already knew.
Did you know that Flemeth was actually just an ancient elven goddess who lost all her power and is now this weird thing? Did you forget this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I always thought that because Morrigan, because you can actually listen to the legend of Flemeth from Morrigan in the first game.
Yeah, but...
Where she talks about Flemeth being a jilted lover and her being literally so pissed that she found a way to become all-powerful.
Nope.
And you can ask her, like, why do you think that's the truth? And Morrigan sort of says that wouldn't really be something you would need to lie about.
Yeah, I mean...
But she did, for no reason, and that makes everything that she told you about and everything you did with Flemeth in the first game completely pointless.
I mean, the thing about this is it's a great example...
Remember the Grimoire?
Yeah, none of it matters. I mean, it's a great example of a writer not having an answer and not thinking, oh, I'm going to have to explain this someday. Like, the explanations that are provided are, in my opinion, very underwhelming. And, I think a lot of us thought Flemeth would become the ultimate antagonist.
She should be the bad guy. She needs to be the main bad guy in a goddamn Dragon Age game.
Well, Flemeth needed to be... I mean, the ulterior motives that we didn't understand, they had to go somewhere.
It needs to be like, she's like, yeah, I'm playing 4D chess. Like, I'm setting up all the situation to destabilize the world. Okay, demons are falling out of the sky and everyone's fighting each other. I think the world's destabilized enough. Can we do something, please, instead of just scheming with that bald asshole who turns out is actually the Dreadwolf for some reason, for no reason?
Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Well, of course I'm getting ahead of myself. I can't contain myself anymore.
The post-credit scene was awful. I hated it. So you beat the bad guy. You send him. You push him into the portal, and he dies. The magic orb he was using to make the holes. You have basically one of your companions. I don't like any of the companions in this game. I don't even want to waste time talking about them. But we have to talk about... I will. We have to talk about Solus, because...
We only have to talk about Solus because for some reason he's the main bad guy.
Yeah, like, basically at the very end of the game, it's revealed that Solus... We thought he was just some elf who likes to talk to spirits and doesn't really participate in elven society.
Which would make sense because...
Yeah, but in reality,
because that's a very common trope of the bush wizard who's just doing his own thing.
Yeah.
But nope, he's
actually... He is also an elven god.
But the Dreadwolf
Yeah.
It's so dirty in here.
Yeah, like that's the Dreadwolf, and he is that character. I mean, I need to remind you that the Elven mythology was always much more of a background thing. It never really, like the Chantry, the human, lore, as far as their religion, has always been a lot more prevalent. So it was very unexpected that certain elements of the Elven mythology become really important at the end of this game.
But it was never like if they had done stuff with the Illuvian mirrors where they were actually relevant and did stuff, you would sort of be like, okay, so maybe this stuff might be real too. But it's always sort of like, nobody knows about the old gods because everyone who remembered died.
Yeah, I mean, basically, that's the basis for what they're doing going forward, is that the stuff we thought we knew isn't true. We're learning it for the first time now. Like, the Dreadwolf, he did bad things. I think they say that Dreadwolf killed Mythal, which is what Flemeth is, but she didn't really die permanently. I don't even remember. Like, the thing is that...
How do you even know this?
I'm just trying to remember what was said. I mean...
How do you even remember what was said?
I barely do.
I remember you hung out with Sarah once on the...
I forgot she existed.
You go out the window and you hang out with her on the roof. And if you play as a man character, she's a lesbian, and despite the fact you can't romance her, you can actually, have a solid friendship with her, and that was like...
I didn't talk to her because she confused me. I had no idea what she was saying half the time.
But she was sort of like... That didn't really make any sense, because I like the idea of a character who was just along for the ride, because it seemed like an interesting thing to do for a little bit of time.
Her, it was like, what do you do here?
Yes.
Like, what do you do? We sit around, you don't do anything.
What would you say that you actually do here?
Yeah, it really doesn't. I mean, so that's Sarah. Solus, long story short, Solus is an elven god. He had the magic ball that caused all the problems, and Corypheus took it from him while he was sleeping or something. And then he's like...
Can you imagine Corypheus trying to sneak up on someone?
No, yeah. So he takes it from him. And then at the very end of the game, because he gets destroyed, so Solus leaves, he gets upset and he leaves the Inquisition, and then he goes to Flemeth and is like, I feel really bad, I caused all the problems. And then Flemeth is like, I'm gonna just die now and give you my power. And then the game ends.
Is that what happened?
That's my interpretation of what happened, and it's elaborated more in a DLC that I did not purchase because I'm done. I will just say very briefly that I did get the first major DLC for free. I got a code on Twitter from one of the devs. So I played Jaws of Hakon, and it sucked. So I'm not going to talk about it.
I didn't play any of them because I've got much better things to do with my money and time.
The other two did sound more interesting, but I sold the game at that point. I actually sold Dragon Age Inquisition to buy WWE 2K16, and that game was so bad that I returned it in like 3 days. So that's the end of the saga. That's where the soul went for me. And now I'm just here talking about it.
I uninstalled it from my SSD drive, but I still own it because for some reason you can't resell digital copies of games.
Well,
because you're just buying the licenses.
Yeah, that's why. It's part of why I don't PC game, But either way, so, that's the plot as best as we can,
We didn't even talk about the plot. We didn't talk about anything.
That's the only thing that matters. That's the overarching plot. Solus is going to be the new bad guy.
You forgot about the awesome part where you are in the forest doing that really important thing where you're walking around and then you have to fight someone and then you go back to Skyfall and say mission accomplished.
You're talking about the entire game, aren't you?
Yes,
yeah.
Something we have not talked about, and it's much more prevalent than good writing, a good plot, and good characters, is how technically bad this game is on a glitch and bug level.
It did run really badly. I mean, I had some nightmare glitches happen to me.
For me, the big scene where Skyfall... Skyfall... Skyfall is the James Bond movie.
Yeah.
Skyhold is the big castle in Rams that apparently nobody knows about.
Well, it's an elven castle or something. Who cares?
It didn't load for me.
It didn't load?
It did not load. The only thing that loaded were the windows. So it was big beauty shots of floating windows and like maybe a spire or two. And it continued to have problems the whole game where I would go out and walk around. And one time I fell through the environment and died.
Yeah, I had a few things kind of like that. The big recurring thing was things not loading in cutscenes. Biggest thing. The video that I did of my review, I have a bunch of these glitches. You can see them in that. But yeah, the idea of like you're walking down the hallway and all the objects in the hallway take a second to load in.
Yes.
It's really, really bad. The camera is cutting through objects and it looks like crap.
What did you play Inquisition on?
I played it on my PlayStation 4.
On PlayStation 4. I played Inquisition on the PC. So we both played it on the higher end. We have another friend.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But he played Dragon Age Inquisition on the Xbox 360.
I can't even imagine.
And if he were here, he would go on and on about how terrible that game looked. And I played when he got it, I was over his house and played the opening mission for it and was like, oh my god, this game is like... It's like when you watch the making of documentaries for something like Star Wars... Attack of the Clones, and they don't have all the animations finished yet, but they just need to do it so that they can shoot the scenes. And you're just like, oh my god, they forgot to add the textures.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that would have looked like. I mean, it didn't run amazingly. Like it was my big glitch.
He would say that people's eyebrows wouldn't render on scenes, or their lips wouldn't move.
That's horrifying. I feel bad for like anybody who bought those versions of the game, because you just got...
I feel bad for anyone who played any version of Dragon Age Inquisition.
It was so boring. It was just like the quintessential example of like a yawn fest. It was just like they made so many compromises to try to improve things after 2.
The gameplay got way worse too. Like
it's just boring. Yeah, like everything is slow and boring, and everything takes forever, and there's no purpose. That's the big problem. Like if they had somehow put a really good story on top of this,
I wouldn't shake two shits at it.
I would be like, well, yeah, it's not that fun to play, but the story is a big improvement.
You can play it. It's a little bit of a slog, but you really get a good idea of.
Yeah,
they did do a good job world building, but you can't say any of that unless you're lying.
Like the world building
I'm looking at you. I know you. You know who I'm talking about.
I don't know. I can't see how anybody could like really enjoy playing it for like extended periods of time. It's so...
Even the multiplayer was boring.
It had multiplayer. I tried playing that because...
I played it once.
Mass Effect 3's multiplayer was a lot of fun, but that's a much more active combat. This was basically the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, but in the Dragon Age engine, and it didn't work. I mean, fighting stuff sucks. Like, fighting dragons is like the lamest... It's so tedious.
It's so long.
Yeah. And then the last boss is a dragon. Like, didn't you see that coming? Like, wow, they spent a little bit of time making the dragon, so I bet the last boss will just be a red dragon, which it was. It was a red glowing dragon.
Yeah. Well, you fight Corypheus a little bit.
Who cares?
And it's the same type of fight that it was in Dragon Age 2, I think.
No, it's worse.
Oh, it's worse.
No, in Dragon Age 2, his fight was like unique because he was the final boss of a DLC where they actually thought about the combat. He's just standing there doing stuff in the other one.
Dragon Age 3 was a long, boring, and agonizing trip that you kept hoping would get better and fun, but never does.
That's quite the note. I mean, that's... yeah, it just doesn't... It's...
And that's the only reason why I played it to completion, was that I was hoping that there would be
something. There was nothing there. I mean, the characters are like... bleh. I barely remember them.
The game that I want to draw the most comparisons to, because I like comparing games. Dragon Age Origins is a lot like KOTOR. Yeah. Dragon Age 2 is exactly Mass Effect 2. Dragon Age Inquisition feels the most like Fable 3. The parts where you're sitting in judgment of people, I was like, oh my god, it's Fable 3!
Those are actually my favorite parts of Inquisition. Just those brief moments where the dialogue lets you kind of do something fun. Yeah.
Instead of whatever the whole rest of the game
The production is worse, too, in those cutscenes. Like, so much less time went into, like, the companion quests. I mean, we look at Mass Effect 2's loyalty missions, and that's, like...
gold standard.
That is a gold standard, and I'm not saying that they were going to do that here, but even Dragon Age 2's missions, the quests that you did for companions...
But why wouldn't you expect that?
I don't know. I just thought, well, like, I was at least expecting something at the level of the companion quests in 2, which they're not. They're so poorly implemented.
Can we even name all of the companions from Dragon Age?
I probably can, but I can't tell you what their quests were.
How about we'll do the test?
Okay.
Describe a character.
Well, I can't do the Plinkett test.
The Plinkett test.
I could try.
Describe Vivian.
Vivian has a hat that looks like horns.
You can't describe what she's wearing.
Vivian is black.
Vivian is black.
That's
there
a description, though. That's
yes.
cheating.
She's
a prominent mage.
Yes.
But the circle doesn't exist anymore. So she joins up with you to try to get more power in nobility.
And she dates an old white guy.
Oh, yeah. He, dies,
yes.
right?
Who dies, I think, no matter what you do.
Yes. I remember doing that quest and getting really confused.
I remember resetting it and doing it again.
Yeah.
Because there may be, if there is a way for you to do that.
I don't know.
Don't tell me, I don't care.
But that's the thing, is even the quests in this game, even loyalty quests, essentially, like companion quests, are just go kill the thing. Yeah. It's not like go on a little mini adventure. This isn't their episode, you know? Some of them have quests like that, but not all of them.
Let's talk about, we'll do characters coming from the previous games again. Okay. So, reoccurring characters are, you have Varric. Again, who's fine. He's
just fine. I liked his quest, except it cut off too abruptly, in my opinion.
I don't even remember his quest.
His quest involved, he meets Bianca. They find out where the bad guys got the red lyrium from.
Oh, that's right.
But it was too short. And then, I mean, they explained in that quest that red lyrium is just blighted lyrium, because lyrium is a mineral, but it's alive, so it's just tainted by the blight. So, I mean, totally plausible explanation.
Yes, that's fine. Oh, that's what red lyrium is.
Doesn't explain.
I need to adjust my.
It doesn't explain why it does the things that it did in 2, though, because those don't even happen in 3. The characters that I mostly remember because they had a quest that was like bad or
Blackwall.
Something. Funny you should mention Blackwall. Blackwall is a character whose quest would not trigger no matter what I did, so I couldn't do any of his stuff. And I'd heard that his quest was actually one of the more interesting ones.
Wasn't he not really a Grey Warden?
Yeah, what I heard is that he killed the real Blackwall and just assumed his identity, and you kind of learn about that, and you can actually like send him to die for his crimes. But that quest would never happen, no matter how hard I tried.
I didn't even do that. I didn't even know about it.
Well, that's the thing, is that it just like the quests are so lazily implemented. You just talk to them, and then they're like, quest, I guess. And they don't feel like they have much substance. Iron Bull, his quest, remember the Iron Bull? Yeah. So the Iron Bull's quest was like really bad. It had all these technical problems where like you're on a hill and his guys are on an opposing hill, and then there's a boat in the ocean, like a ship, and the camera's cutting between all three, and every time it does it, the environment like unloads and loads, and it just looked like complete garbage.
I don't know how this game that looks so, and this is something. It's like visually impressive,
like a painting. You can't interact with it. Once you try to interact with the world, then everything breaks. It's like
then they kick you out of the museum.
Yeah, it's the epitome of it's like a holographic set. That's what it feels like. They may have made it look nice, but it's just there. You can't.
It's literally the definition of wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people levy that criticism on a lot of games, especially a lot of modern games these days. And I do think that Dragon Age Inquisition does genuinely fall into that, where there is really no depth to 85 to 95% of the content you're doing. But you can ignore it. You can just farm PowerPoints by going to all the camps, not doing quests, and you'll get everything you need to advance. And just skip all the bullshit. Just only do the quests that you know have cutscenes and choices, and you might enjoy the game a lot more, but I don't know. Would you do that?
Oh, you're asking the wrong person. Yeah. I never want to touch these pieces of shit ever again. I was really considering, I literally kept talking, I kept saying, before we did this, I needed to brush up on my Dragon Age, and I couldn't even bring myself to install it back on my computer.
Yeah.
It hurts so much, I don't even really want to play Dragon Age Origins.
No, again. Come on.
Because it doesn't mean anything anymore. It doesn't go anywhere. It's like, Imagine, I don't even know. It's like The Matrix. It's
Yeah.
like, why would you even want to watch the first Matrix movie again?
I don't agree with that. I still think that if I played Dragon Age Origins today, I would really enjoy it. I really do. And
but I just think that I've played it so much that I've done
everything.
I'm sure I could find more stuff to do.
I mean, as far as...
there's more stuff to do on your freaking 9th playthrough of Dragon Age Origins than there is on your first playthrough of Dragon Age Inquisition. And it's not... it shouldn't be that way. You have all the money and all the resources you could possibly want to make this game. Yeah. And you still don't fundamentally understand what made the first Dragon Age so good.
Yeah, basically what happened was they were either mandated or they chose to just implement more and more modern...
Who do you blame more?
Oh,
do you blame BioWare more for the disaster that the Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition were, or is this an EA thing?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, you could definitely attribute, the deadlines for 2, you could attribute more to the publisher. But the creative choices, the writing and all that, that's obviously the company's fault. And I think that they picked the wrong modern trends to import. I mean, you started with a game that was a throwback game, and then you tried to add more and more modern stuff on top of it, and they picked a lot of the wrong things, and the writing just wasn't anywhere close to its A game.
They couldn't make it a Skyrim.
It was a complete mistake trying to put stuff from Skyrim in this game. I mean, Skyrim works for me because there is basically no plot. It is truly just adventuring.
And there's tons of freedom.
You're free to adventure.
You're free to stab motherfuckers in the face.
Yeah.
Do you remember the graveyard where you met Justice from Dragon Age Inquisition? Remember how cool that was?
Yeah, I mean...
He was just in a corpse.
Yeah, I mean, everything is so much more interesting. And this game is so disjointed. All the areas, they don't fit together in a way that works. And it was just disappointing. I mean, we were clearly people who were disappointed. I know there are people who still root for BioWare for this franchise.
I don't want them to do bad.
No, that's what hurts, is that it sucks when a company that you like and have admired makes bad decisions, but they weren't really out of spite. I don't want to see BioWare get lazy. Bethesda got lazy, and it makes me really upset.
I kind of don't care if any of it's going to really hurt if Mass Effect turns out, and it's not.
Oh, yeah.
But it's going to be... The concern that I have is that the fandom and reputation of these BioWare games will blind a lot of people into thinking a game is good when it's not.
I mean, the brand is changing, and Andromeda and Inquisition together are going to determine the next era of BioWare as a whole. I'm apprehensive about Inquisition. Oh my god. Wow. See, exactly. I can't even call it Mass Effect Andromeda. I keep accidentally calling it Inquisition.
Naming conventions.
Yeah. I mean, I love the Mass Effect games, and that, I don't really have a strong desire for this. I mean, look, you outgrow things. I also attribute it to that. I like those Mass Effect games, I like Dragon Age games a lot, but time has passed, and I am a different person, I have different preferences, and I think that that's something a lot of people don't acknowledge sometimes when they continue to blindly like things. I'm fortunate to still really like certain series that I've always liked, don't get me wrong.
Like Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, but those are the exceptions.
You want to talk about Star Trek II Wrath of Khan?
I mean, I would love to talk about Star Trek II Wrath of Khan for the next 4 hours of this podcast.
Okay. I don't know. I am not going to be purchasing Dragon Age.
Wow. We both made this mistake. This mistake.
I totally did not mean to do that.
Okay.
I will not be purchasing Mass Effect Andromeda on launch, not through any sort of spite or anything, but it just doesn't... Unless it gets really good reviews, unless everyone comes out and saying, this is the new standard.
But Inquisition got really good reviews.
Which is what made me go out and buy it.
Yeah. So, I mean, Andromeda is a game I will probably get when it's cheaper.
But also, it was one of those... Dragon Age Inquisition was one of those things where I was sort of in denial about some of the more negative reviews.
Oh, yeah?
I remember, the world... I remember a lot of reviews saying that it's an okay game, but some of the worlds are too big. And I was like, they just don't understand how fun this is going to be.
They were too big.
And it was a really reality gut punch.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to be more critical of the critics.
The idea of playing a game for like 5 hours and declaring, "Oh, this is awesome." I mean, I wonder if that's what happened with Dragon Age. You start at the beginning and you're having fun, but this game takes so long to really digest, and then it comes out of you, and it's the worst stool you've ever seen.
Oh boy!
So I feel like maybe that's a good closer. I mean,
I don't know how you comparing Dragon Age Inquisition to Stool. I don't think there's anything else you need to add to that, except for maybe referencing the fact that we're the toilet bowls.
We are the toilet bowls. This podcast, this channel, us as human beings, we are the receptacles for the garbage and waste that the gaming industry sees fit to bestow upon us, and it's my duty on YouTube to review it and talk about it and